His address from the Oval Office, the president says he quit the presidential race to unite the country and his Democratic Party.
You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
Recapping the top story for this hour, Correctional Service officials have seized a number of contraband and unwanted items at the Johannesburg prison, also known as Sun City. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby, the Blitzboks face an Olympic exit after opening day losses. And in tennis, Yannick Sinner, the top seed, withdraws from the Paris Olympics due to tonsillitis. We'll give you the details just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. A truck fire incident from overnight last night still being attended to on the N1 in the Western Cape, just south of Toes Rafia. It's just by the 318 Montague exit. So if you're driving between Toes Rafia and Durans, expect to be just waiting around there for a while to clear that scene. Also, further into Cape Town, the N1, no change in respect to the flooding. The left lanes remaining closed opposite Canal Walk. The N1 into town's already very busy coming through from the Belleville side as you hit the flooding, and of course motorists will be just spreading out onto alternative routes to gridlock those options again this morning. Just saw a tweet coming in yesterday about 2 hours to get from Belleville through to Cape Town from a motorist. So that's as heavy as it sort of gets. And just staying in Cape Town, Spine Road between Mfuleni and the N2, so between Old Fora Road and the N2 highway, that option just north of Khayelitsha also closed due to flooding. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
A blast from the past. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Nice to have you along with us this morning. 7 minutes after 6 the time. And of course, so much going on in our country at the moment. Really going to miss being with you after tomorrow. Anyway, it was interesting watching, and there's been a big ruling. And I think this is a very important ruling in the High Court in Tshwane, as I understand it. And basically, it is all about the NHI. On paper, it doesn't look like it's about the NHI. But it really is all about the NHI. And let me just tell you what happened, which is this is around the National Health Act. And in the National Health Act is a provision that government would be able to say to a doctor, before you open your practice in Sandton, you would need a certificate of need. And because we think there are too many doctors in Sandton, you can't actually practice in Sandton. The idea was that would mean there would be more doctors in Umlazi, for example. The High Court yesterday, throwing that out and saying that is just not true. And as a result, it is what's described as legally irrational. And as a result of that means that basically this idea of a certificate of need, government saying to doctors, before you practice, you actually need to have confirmation from us that you can practice there. That's being chucked out. And the reason that's important is because this is one of the central provisions of the NHI. And along with it is this idea that someone who provides healthcare, anyone who provides healthcare, could really be forced to go into an agreement with government, a public-private partnership, which would basically allow government to force people to work with government. And so all of this has been thrown out. And this is huge. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine the implications for the National Health Insurance Scheme. It's all over the place. And so this really now is a very, very important and interesting aspect of it. And it may mean that parts of the NHI themselves are unconstitutional. At first reading it probably does mean that, and there have been various warnings about all of this over the last few months. Government now and the Health Department now will have to consider appealing. And of course, this is a very, what you would call a high-stakes appeal. if I can call it that. Really very, very high stakes appeal. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. It's kind of hard to know how it plays out. It's really hard to know how it's going to play out from here. But let's just see what happens and how it's all going to work. So that's one of the big issues that's really happened over the last sort of 24 hours. And the NHI is still the sort of hot button issue at the moment, if you consider what's happening with government and the coalition government, and the ANC, that the DA is in the coalition government with the ANC, etc. It really is quite, well, I wanted to say messy. I mean, it is messy. It's hard to know how it's going to play out from here. Let me put it like that. Other issues coming up at the moment, and in Joburg, one of the big stories of the week has been around Kabelo Kwamanda, whether or not he will stay El Jamal's mayor in Joburg. The DA now getting involved in this and saying that removing him wouldn't fix anything. You actually need to dissolve the council. And they've been saying this consistently for ages. I have to say, though, I just don't see an early election in Joburg. I just don't see it at this stage. And all the way along, I've sort of, in interviews with the DA, sort of said, I don't see this happening. I don't think anyone really wants to do that apart from them. So it's interesting to see how that's going to play out. In KwaZulu-Natal, Sibonisiso Duma, he's the leader of the ANC there. But Tami Ntuli from the IFP is the premier. And Tami Ntuli has made Sibonisiso Duma the leader of government business. He's also an MEC, of course. And it's quite an interesting decision by Ntuli to make Duma in charge of government business, because it can be quite an influential position. Duma says the first thing he needs to do, the first priority, is to speak to the taxi industry in KwaZulu-Natal. He described them as the backbone of the province. And there are big issues with taxis in KZN at the moment. I mean, absolutely huge issues with them. So, it's difficult to kind of know how this is going to play out. But also, Sibonisiso Duma having to go and deal with and negotiate with the taxi industry. It turns out that Gwede Mantashe, in his budget speech as Minister of Mineral Resources, has suggested or hinted that there could be a sort of export tax, that one way to force beneficiation, minerals to be beneficiated here, would be to have an export tax. And the Minerals Council saying that a stick won't work. You actually need something else. A stick won't do it. And basically being very, very critical of that. And you would expect them to be. He says that the Minerals Council says this would have a huge impact on the actual industry. And I think it would. It would basically make our minerals a lot more expensive. And that surely is going to be problematic. I mean, very, very difficult. In Mahikeng, the Human Rights Commission has given Mahikeng 90 days to sort out its electricity infrastructure. And this is after a 10-year-old girl, Hlompo Tika, was killed 2 years ago. She was electrocuted. We've had this happen in other places. I seem to remember a case in Joburg many years ago where a child was basically playing and sort of walking around a light pole, and something was wrong with the light pole and the child died. All happened in Mahikeng. And the question I have is that the Human Rights Commission, I'm sure, is right to say you've got 90 days to fix your infrastructure. The question I have is, can Mahikeng do that or not? I don't know if they can. And this gets us right down to the capacity of councils at the moment and how difficult all of that's been. But the capacity of councils to actually fix the problems that they have, I think is going to be one of the big issues that we see. There have been 2 incidents involving racism in schools in the last couple of days. And the first one that I heard of was at Pretoria High School for Girls. And they've suspended 12 girls. And what seems to have happened is that they formed a WhatsApp group. And it was a WhatsApp group that involved only white girls. And it's sort of described as if they've been making comments that are sort of referred to as microaggressions. It seems, reading between the lines, and obviously I haven't seen anything that happened on the group, it seems they've been making comments that are incorrect or maybe racist. I don't know how far we go, because I don't know what exactly we're dealing with. And the claim from black girls, black learners at the school, is that they are treated unfairly. And there's a big investigation. I think it'll all sort of come out eventually. These things do. But hard to kind of know what exactly we're dealing with. And then at the Tableview High School in Cape Town, a teacher is accused, a substitute teacher, of using the K word during a lesson. It was a history lesson. I don't know if the teacher was trying to use it, in what context the teacher was trying to use it. I don't know the name of the teacher either. But the Western Cape Education Department says they're monitoring the sort of classroom practice of the teacher. I would be a little bit surprised if you sort of keep your job in that context. But I don't know. I don't know the identity of the teacher either. So there's a sort of lot to look at in these cases. As always, there's a lot going on this morning, and it's really good to hear from you. You know the number, of course, 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Conversations to come this morning around food price inflation, which I think are going to be quite important. Also this morning around the indigent water policy in Cape Town. They suggest some people are using too much water. I think you look around Cape Town at the moment, a shortage of water isn't the first thing that sort of strikes you, is it? Because they've had so much rain over the last little while. Also this morning, and we'll find out a bit more about this, it looks like a silly thing, this war of insults between Nahau and Beki Mtolo in the KwaZulu-Natal ANC. I suspect there's something actually underneath it all which is driving it that's a lot more important, so we'll look at that as well. Nice to have you along. You know the number, 086 000 2032. It's 6:15.
Okay, so what do we have here? A new dub telenovela on S3? The last one was absolutely amazing, so let's see what this one's about. Paloma, a seamstress and single mother, receives the wrong test results and finds out that she only has 6 months to live. Interesting. She decides to live her best life and do things that she never had the courage to do. Understandable. Paloma unexpectedly finds love from a stranger she slept with. I see. She finds out that she received the wrong results and decides to meet the man who actually has 6 months to live? Wait, what? And right there, I know I'm hooked. Channel your inner drama with Bomb Successful, a life worth living. Weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The reality is that 90% of South Africans don't save enough for retirement. This National Savings Month, why not be part of the 10% who do? Choose an interest rate of up to 12.6% after 60 months with a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app in less than 2 minutes. Join the bank that's best for your savings goals. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Borwa. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sibeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Kriel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Eva Cheaper, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. What's on the diary this morning? What's coming up?
There's quite a lot of stories for today. So the Electoral Court is expected to hear the DA's challenge against President Ramaphosa over his address to the nation on the 26th of May. So now the DA is arguing that because this was 3 days before the elections, it was aimed at gaining votes for the ANC. So the requests from the Electoral Court from the DA includes reducing the ANC's votes by 1% and imposing a 200,000 rand fine on the president himself.
Sure. It's going to be very interesting to watch that one.
That's true. So yesterday, police raided the Johannesburg prison, also known as Sun City. They confiscated a bunch of items, including cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, and PlayStations. I can't understand how they made it through with
PlayStations. How you get a PlayStation in there?
I have questions. So our team is going to be following up on the 12 learners from the Pretoria High School for girls who were suspended over racism allegations at the school. So as you mentioned earlier, the incident follows a planned protest by a group of learners, which was scheduled for Friday last week, regarding alleged racial connotations in a WhatsApp group that were complaining about the black learners at the school, and that WhatsApp group was comprised of just white learners at the school. In other news, calls are intensifying for Gwamanda to step down. So now the Joburg Crisis Alliance has joined the call, and they're saying that Gwamanda is unfit and lacks vision to lead one of the country's economics powerhouses. So the call is echoed by lots of organizations, including the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, OUTA, as well as Defend Our Democracy, just to name a few. Moving to the Meyiwa case, the latest update is yesterday the Defence Counsel says the data pertaining to the alleged communication between Kelu Khumalo and accused number 5 does not correspond with the Vodacom evidence and therefore it constitutes as fraud. So this comes after a cell phone data analyst previously testified that Meyiwa's girlfriend and singer Kelu Khumalo had been in communication with accused number 5. And just a quick one, I always want to sneak in odd stories.
Yes.
The latest sanctions by the U.S. authorities on affiliates of ISIS in Africa has once again identified South Africa as one of the bases used to facilitate terrorist financing in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's going to be interesting because how is this going to affect the measures to exit grey listing in the country?
There's so much there, isn't there? Eva Cheaper, thanks very much indeed. We'll be listening on the radio 19 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane fine 7 and 24, Johannesburg fine 3 and 22, Vereeniging fine 0 and 21, Bombela fine 11 and 22, Polokwane fine 4 and 23, Mahakeng fine 3 and 22, Vryburg fine -2 and 20, Mangaung fine -3 and 18, Kimberley fine -1 and 19, Uppington fine 1 and 19, Cape Town fine morning fog becoming partly cloudy from the afternoon, a light to moderate northerly wind 10 and 15, George partly cloudy, a light and variable wind 7 and 17, Gqeberha partly cloudy, isolated showers, rain in the morning, a light and variable wind 10 and 19, East London partly cloudy, morning light rain, a moderate southwesterly wind 12 and 19, eThekwini partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh southwesterly, the temperatures 14 and 19. Richards Bay partly cloudy, isolated morning showers and rain, a moderate to fresh southwesterly wind 15 and 20, and Pietermaritzburg morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy 9 and 22.
If you love premium documentaries, then we know you love Thursday nights on S3. Broadcaster Alice Levine asks if there's anything such as normal when it comes to sex and sexuality in the 2020s. She meets sexual adventurers up and down Britain, those pushing the boundaries of sex, intimacy and relationships. Tune into Sex Actually, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Channel your inner curiosity with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
S3. Discover the new snack and save deals at Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Get 2 plus 1 cheapest free on any bars, drinks, plus snacks. When you're in the mood for a comforting chocolate, or craving a collagen bar for a beauty boost, or even some biltong for the upcoming game, get to Dis-Chem for our snack and save combos. There's plenty to choose from, with something for everyone. Offers valid until 11 August. Excludes all advertised products. Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Better health starts here. The countdown to the Paris Olympics 2024 is just days away. Live the intense rivalries, inspiring comebacks, and record-breaking performances from a wide variety of sporting disciplines such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, and football. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 after 6, good morning. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told the US Congress overnight that Israel will fight in Gaza until, quote, it achieves victory, end quote. CNN reporting that he also, as they put it, falsely downplayed the role of Israel in the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, which has obviously been caused by the Israeli offensive there. Netanyahu also focusing on Iran, the International Criminal Court, and people in Israel who are protesting against his government. Naeem Jean is a senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. Naeem, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you.
How do you assess Netanyahu's message last night? I mean, clearly he has no plan to change course.
No, he has no plan to change course. In fact, his speech last night was an attempt to get bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress in particular, and the current and future administrations for his continued war. It was quite an audacious speech, I think, and in some ways quite shameful. The Congress people who cheered and gave him a standing ovation.
Sometimes when a politician makes a speech, they can just try and speak only to the people who agree with them, or they can try and change and attract the sort of middle ground. And the US is a bit complicated because I don't know if there's much middle ground in direct politics, but there may be middle ground in the situation in Gaza. Did Netanyahu attempt to appeal to those people at all, or did he speak only to his supporters?
No, he spoke mainly to his supporters, but also to an extent he was speaking to people back in Israel, trying to convince them that he has American support for whatever he's doing, and so they should, lower the temperature, if you like. In terms of the U.S. itself, what might be a middle ground, many of them were not in the Congress Hall. Around 80 of them boycotted it. Some who did come held up signs and heckled and things like that. But no, he was speaking to a particular crowd. He was not trying to appeal to a broader crowd, and used the kind of language for that. I mean, he rejected the notion that there's a clash of civilizations, because the clash that he sees is between civilization and barbarism. All of those who are not part of the U.S. and Israeli kind of ambit are barbarians. So in some ways, kind of, the old colonial tropes as well being brought in, which is appropriate, I suppose, for Netanyahu. And he spoke about the ICC again, trying to get American support, because he knows that the Americans oppose the ICC. He didn't, of course, mention the quite significant and landmark ruling of the International Court of Justice last week, very far-reaching ruling against Israel.
We're still, after everything that's happened, and still in Gaza, what is continuing to happen. There's some reports that there's sort of US optimism about the chances of some kind of peace deal. We've heard this before. Is there any reason for optimism for peace in Gaza at the moment? I can't see any.
No, in my opinion, there isn't. I mean, the most recent thing you have on the table is a deal announced by the American president, which he said was drawn up by the Israelis, which has been accepted by the resistance in Gaza in the main, but the Israelis now don't want to talk about it. More cynical than that, one can't get, I don't think. So from Netanyahu's perspective, he will, as he said last night, just continue. The thing about that is that he makes it sound as if Israel is on the verge of victory, which it's not. I mean, if you look at the videos coming out of Gaza, continuing to come out every day, what you're seeing is a resistance, and not just Hamas, but the PFLP armed wing, the Islamic Jihad armed wing, the Fatah armed wing as well. The videos that we're seeing shows that command and control continues and is strong, that they secure communications despite the Israelis taking over much of the strip, bombing much of the strip, and having drones flying overhead 24 hours a day. They have secure telephone communications that they're using. They seem to have enough weaponry to particularly and specifically target different targets, etc. So it seems that the resistance is, not deprived of any ways of continuing, but Israel makes it seem like it's on the verge of victory, as it has been doing for months. It's a lie.
Naeem Jinab, thanks very much indeed. Senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. Do appreciate the time. 28 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
What's going on with the Sevens?
They had a tough day, the Blitzboks, losing to Ireland and New Zealand. It was their opening day of action in Paris Olympics. Now, this means the Boks, they must secure a significant win against Japan in their final pool match and rely on favourable results from other games. So the scoreline, they were defeated by Ireland 10-5 and 17-5 by New Zealand. Now, meanwhile, the defending champions Fiji, New Zealand and Ireland have already secured their spots in the quarterfinals with dominant performances. The Blitzboks' fate will be decided today as they fight for a place in the knockouts. Soccer, the much publicised move of TS Galaxy head coach Sead Ramovic is on hold after negotiations hit a brick wall. The Serbian was said to have signed and sealed a deal with Raja Casablanca in Morocco, but it seems not all has been concluded. The public broadcaster understands that Raja Casablanca is against Ramovic bringing his technical team, that's 2 assistants and a goalkeeper coach. The thorny issue may see him on the bench against FC Augsburg on Saturday.
No, it's still going on, so everybody that knows me, I have principles, I have values, and if this kind of terms I don't see on the table, I respect myself, nothing will happen.
Does that mean we may see you on the bench on Saturday against FC Augsburg, or are you leaving anytime soon?
No, like now, how the things is, I will be Saturday here and I will be the coach for Galaxy.
That's TS Galaxy head coach Sead Ramovic. Now, Salt Lake City has been formally awarded the 2034 Winter Olympics following a vote by International Olympic Committee in Paris. The decision gives Utah its second games after hosting it in 2002. Salt Lake City was the lone contender the Olympic Committee was considering for 2034. Here's Utah Governor Spencer Cox.
There was significant risk. We started hearing several days ago that there was a possibility that they wouldn't even take a vote today. After all of this work and this long journey and all the preparations, you can imagine how that would have gone over. But they also recognize that there's danger in kind of turning off Salt Lake City, who has done everything right. They recognized it was not our fault that these conversations were happening. And so they very wisely came together and said, okay, is there another path? Can we at least agree to work on this problem together?
That's a wrap on Sunrise. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. More to come. The city of Cape Town says some people are using too much water, not a drop to drink. That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation at 6:30.
Thanks, Stephen. In your news making headlines for this hour, the Correctional Services Department has refuted Thabo Bester's claim that he's being ill-treated in prison. The convicted murderer and rapist also says he's not allowed to consult with his legal team. In other news, but staying with the Correctional Service, officials have seized a number of contraband and unwanted items at the Johannesburg prison popularly known as Sun City. Police were accompanied by prison wardens in conducting the raid last night, where they confiscated items including cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, PlayStation consoles and dagga. And lastly, the Electoral Court is today expected to hear the DA's challenge against President Cyril Ramaphosa over his address to the nation on the 26th of May. Ramaphosa's address was just 3 days before the watershed elections, which the DA has argued was aimed at garnering votes for the ANC. I'll be back at 7 for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Gauteng highways looking all right this morning. No major problems. Just a reminder, if you come in from the south, there's the roadworks, a big construction around Crossmere, so that's a little bit on the sluggish side. As you come up in towards Joburg, the Mike 1 queuing from Boysons through to about Smith Street this morning. And there is an unusual queue just on the N12 approaching Galulis. Looks like something's probably crashed or broken down before you get to the interchange. Durban, bit of traffic at Tweedy Hill this morning, heading north in towards the Durban area. If you're coming out of Pietermaritzburg, we are just looking at a bit of a slowdown there as well, just down around the Umlas Road area. And then, of course, you've got the roadworks at Cliffdale, which are having a bit of a slowing impact as well. Cape Town, no change this morning. The flooding on the N1, both sides near Canal Walk, Century City, still there. The N1 inbound's already backlogging to Yipti Yaga, so it's back up Plattekloof Hill in towards that Belleville area. That's half the story. The other half the story that completes the picture is the enormous backlog that you get on other local alternatives, particularly through Panorama, Plattekloof, Boortesag, Edgemead, Vasco, Goodwood areas as motorists try to get off the highway, and especially those that go into Century City and Canal Walk. They don't want to have to go through that flooding and then down to the Sable off-ramp, so they're all coming off and trying to get over Bosman's Down Bridge, Edgemead Drive sort of approach. It all gets very heavy, and it is starting to load up with some delays this morning. Also, just watch for a crash at Khayelitsha. It's on Muway at the N2 bridge, causing some sort of localised congestion around that one. Also, some extra traffic heading that way because Spine Road to and from the N2 is closed from Mfuleni, also due to flooding. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ntaleng Lechele, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Stephen, and I hope you're well.
Oh, good. How are the markets?
Now, sentiment across the world has really taken a knock. It seems like a risk-off environment. On Wall Street, stocks sold off yesterday, weighed down by underwhelming reports from two mega-cap tech companies, Tesla and Alphabet. Now, leading the losses were the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite, both indexes posting their worst session since 2022. Moving over to Asia, it's a bloodbath on that front, with markets plunging deeper into the red following global peers. Traders on that end digesting South Korea's latest GDP figures for the second quarter, while awaiting the US GDP print out later today. Back at home, local markets broke a 2-day winning streak, closing in the red yesterday following global sentiment and shrugging off that upbeat inflation print. The JSE all share shed 0.14%, with most indices in the red. Meanwhile, there's not much action playing out on the currency front, with the rand remaining steady at 18.41 to the dollar.
And then LVMH's second quarter earnings, they miss expectations.
Stephen, it's not just LVMH. That luxury sector really not faring well. Last week we spoke about Burberry and Richemont, both companies reporting downbeat sales and earnings due to China's economic slowdown and a crackdown by Beijing on displays of wealth. Everything taking place in China is taking a toll on some of the world's top luxury brands, which further highlights how important that market is. Now, during the second quarter, LVMH says sales in Asia, which include China but not Japan, fell by 14% in the second quarter, worsening from a 6% decline in the first quarter. Looking at the overall sales picture, the world's largest luxury company had slower sales growth, only taking up 1% in the first half of the year. But company CEO Bernard Arnault is still hopeful. He said LVMH is doing well despite uncertain economic and political times. He's cautious but confident about the rest of the year. Despite the optimism he is showing, investors really not liking the numbers and dropping those luxury stocks. LVMH alone has seen its share price tumble almost 20% in the last 12 months.
And Egypt remains the star performer for Vodacom.
So Vodacom's revenue diversification strategy by product and geographically is starting to pay off. That's as it delivered a 10% jump in service revenue on a normalized basis in the first quarter. Zooming in on how Vodacom fared in Egypt, that region really coming out tops, with service revenue up 43.7% in local currency terms and financial services revenue jumping 87%. Now, the group has pointed to strong customer service and superior network quality. Vodacom's network services were ranked the best in Egypt by a local testing company on that front. Vodacom's financial services unit, in the meantime, also performed well. Company CEO Shamil Jusub noted the upbeat growth from M-Pesa and further said that financial services remains the largest component of beyond mobile sales. Vodacom now processes $400 billion in mobile wallet transaction value annually, highlighting the scale of that business.
And Taleng Lechela, thanks very much indeed. Back in an hour.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, good morning, Jumbo Africa, to the listeners.
It looks like now the leader of Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, General Dagalo, he will attend ceasefire talks in Switzerland.
Stephen, this came yesterday from the U.S. and Saudi Arabia that they are planning the peace mediation of the Sudanese generals in Switzerland on the 14th of August. Despite Dagalo saying that he will be present through the Twitter street, Stephen, we have not heard from Abdel Fattah al-Burhan whether he will take part in these talks. Remember, Stephen, we've been saying there's been to and fro Saudi Arabia. Egypt now is back to Switzerland, also mediated by the U.S. And I see that they have also invited the AU. They've invited the UN also to be observers in these peace talks that have been planned, what they call the ceasefire talks in Switzerland that is planned on the 15th of August next month.
And then Kenya's President William Ruto has appointed 4 members of the main opposition party in his new cabinet. I wonder where he got that idea.
Even he has appointed them, but still there is tension that people are still skeptical about this appointment. That even Raila Odinga yesterday came out very clear that some of the members of his party must not join what they called a new broad-based cabinet. The finance minister has been appointed, Stephen John Mbadi Nkongo, as well as the energy minister, James Opiyo Wadai. These are the two ministers that came out very clear. But Raila Odinga is not happy, Stephen, with this arrangement of William Ruto, as others are saying. From these 20 appointees so far announced are the same members of the same cabinet that Ruto had a challenge with them. Now it's before the parliament that parliament has to first approve this election or this nomination and selection of these ministers by William Ruto. It is still tense in Kenya, even despite that he's doing a cabinet reshuffle or he's doing the broad-based cabinet.
And then in Ethiopia in the south, this awful landslide, over 200 people dead.
Stephen, this is very sad. This is in the southeast. This is in the southern part of Ethiopia at what they call Gofa zone. Came to that Grootes district in the south of Ethiopia that they have lost 229 people. Government still struggling, Stephen, how to deal with this mudslide that has affected many people who have also lost their homes and people who have died. This is very concerning that even the AU has sent their messages of even condolences to the families who have lost their lives with this climatic uncertainty that is in the south part of Ethiopia, Gofa zone in Ethiopia.
And then in Nigeria, the government asking for more time to end economic hardship.
Stephen, their inflation is at 34% now, nearly 3 decades, and amid cost of living, President Bola Tinubu, he has tried to cut the petrol subsidy, tried to deal with the Naira. There's a protest looming on the 1st of August, where there are some citizens who are planning through the social media, Stephen, to go on the street on issues of bad governance and economic hardships. And now the government is pleading for more time, as they are asking that the government the government is asking for more time from the citizens to say, give us time to deal with the economic challenges that we are facing. You'll remember last week he had also had a challenge with the Labour parties that were also talking about the new minimum wage with the government. So Bola Tinubu is having a struggle in Nigeria as there's a looming massive strike on the 1st of August.
And then in our archives, you're taking us back to the 25th of July, 1946.
Stephen, I don't know how many people they know his full name. That is the widow and the Cuban-born and Jamaican singer and songwriter, entrepreneur, widow of reggae legend Bob Marley, Alpha Rita Constantia Rita Marley was born on this day. She will have been, he's 78 years even, and his family is giving him a tribute today from Jamaica this afternoon, where they are celebrating Dr. Alpha Rita Anderson, the First Lady of Reggae, the co-founder of the Tough Gong International and Global Humanitarian. He's been to Ghana, he's been to many countries, Stephen. In one of his books, No Man, No Cry, My Life with Bob Marley, he spoke about how he was raised by his aunt in Jamaica when he was very young, when he was taken from Cuba to Kingston, Jamaica. Asante sana SG, as was leading the conversation, SFM, observing the International Mandela Month.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thanks very much indeed. Back tomorrow, more news from our continent through the day here on SFM.
Every year, 30,000 missionaries are called to serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints across the globe, the largest full-time missionary force of any church. Most are under 25 and away from home for up to 2 years, and the biggest training center in Europe is located in Chorley, Lancashire. The Mormons Are Coming follows the journey of 3 young missionaries through the first few months of training and work in the field, which can make or break them. Tune into The Mormons Are Coming, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best dockies with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Could you be paying less for your car insurance? Outsurance has comprehensive cover with all the bells and whistles. An essential cover for cars older than 5 years under 125,000 Rand that aren't financed.
I am Flip. I'm from Vredendal. I'm 54 years old. I'm only paid 267 Rand for my 2005 Ford Ranger from Outsurance Essential.
Whether you choose comprehensive or essential cover, Outsurance will make sure you don't pay more than you have to for car insurance. SMS out to 30754 now. Even if you just save a few $100s a month, it could add up to thousands a year.
Hi, I'm Lorraine. I'm 31 from Durbanville. I pay 770 Rand a month for my 2023 Toyota Corolla Cross from Outsurance Comprehensive.
Do it now. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
A century is full of thrilling moments. You can break it down to 10 decades. It is a journey of all kinds of challenges, but winners don't focus on the storm. They look forward to a rainbow. By contrast, South Africa tied its best ever gold medal performance in 100 years. From 1912 in Stockholm to London in 2012. Once again, it was in the pool that Team SA did most of their triumphing, with Cameron van der Berg setting a world record in winning the men's 100-meter breaststroke. And who will ever forget Chad de Clos toppling Michael Phelps in the men's 200-meter butterfly.
It's going to be close. Does he touch? He doesn't. Leclos touched because Phelps got it wrong on the line. It's unbelievable.
Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
16 minutes to 7, you know the number. The city of Cape Town says it might impose water restrictions on areas where there are high numbers of people who receive water for free, but they say are using too much water. The city says households who qualify for free water under the city's programme for the indigent have been told not to use more than 15,000 litres a month. People in places like Langa, Guguletu, Philippi, they say are using too much water. Councillor Zahid Badruddin is the member of the Mayoral Committee for Water and Sanitation in the city of Cape Town. Councillor Badruddin, good morning to you. What warning are you issuing here?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So just a quick correction. It's not areas being turned off. Rather, it's our indigent users who are using water excessively. And so we, as you correctly say, offer our residents up to 15,000 litres of water for free, which is almost more than doubled what the national requirement is, which is about 6 kilolitres. And we've seen that up to about 21% of our indigent users are using beyond the 15 kilolitres. And in some instances, there are residents who are indigent using about 40 kilolitres of water, which is almost an average size pool. And so we don't turn off water or trickle the system without appealing to our residents to please reduce their water consumption. And we issue them monthly warnings to say you're still above the 15 kilolitres. We do that twice, and after which we then trickle the system. But this is only after we've appealed to our residents to please use less water. At the same time, we're also very cognizant of the fact that in our city there are many, many properties that have backyard dwellers, large families, sick family members. And so 15 kilolitres isn't necessarily the maximum volume of free water that we offer. Residents who require more water are able to apply for additional water, which the city will then assess and approve such applications where the criteria is met. But really, it's us trying to conserve the water that we have in our city, so that this shared resource can last as long as possible. We've been very lucky with the rains that we have now. Our dams are in a healthy condition. But as we're driving our new water program, we still have to look after our surface water as we are.
Okay, I mean, I understand all of that, but I mean, you don't have a water shortage at the moment, surely. I mean, after everything that's happened, no one can say that. Does it really matter to you how much people are using?
Absolutely, it does matter how much people are using, because as we're seeing with our rainfall patterns at the moment, we don't get the same amount of water as we have received in previous winters, long winters or long rain periods with a steady volume of rain coming. Now what we're seeing is much shorter periods of rain with heavy rainfall patterns. And so we don't know, and the South African Weather Service agrees, and their advice with the scientific community is that we don't know how much rain we will get into the next winter period. Even in the next winter period itself, So it's important that we conserve the surface water, our dam water, which will essentially look after us this particular period for the next summer season only until hopefully the next rains arrive. So conserving our water is an essential part of our communication to our residents.
One of the things about this is, as you say, it's illegal actually for a council to switch off someone's water, so you have to install a trickle system. Isn't it quite difficult to install the trickle system? And basically, if you leave a cup under it and you switch the tap full on, maybe in an hour you'll have a full cup. It takes a long time. But isn't it actually quite difficult to do, quite expensive for you to do?
No, not at all. Our meters allow for a simple placement of a disc, which ultimately then reduces the diameter size of the pipe that the water flows through. And so we put the disc in, and when arrangements are made, the disc is then simply removed. It's a very easy process for us and not costly at all.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Zahid Badruddin is member of the Mayoral Committee for Water and Sanitation in the city of Cape Town. 11 minutes to 7.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Joburg. Mike 1's pretty heavily backed from Goldreach City, moving through towards Empire Road. Very heavy. It's heavy enough to be pushing M2 traffic into the Crown back as far as Joe Slovo Drive this morning. The N1 through Midrand, always worth having a look at what's going on there this time of the morning. It is getting busy, perhaps not as busy as it normally is, but from Brockfontein down to New Road, it is filling up quickly. The R21, if you're on your way to the airport, don't forget the roadworks at Clayville. There's already backlogging traffic through that section, heading down towards Olifantsfontein Road. Leaving Pietermaritzburg to Durban, it was clear when we last spoke. It's not so clear anymore. A broken down truck in the roadworks near Umlas Road is the hold up there. That's pushed traffic back through Linfield Park and working back towards Ashburton. And Cape Town, as we've been warning about the knock-on effect from this flooding on the N1 inbound before Sable Road. The highway is busy, but we are now just starting to see that alternative route action. Motorists coming down Ace Cricker from as far back as Belleville, then diverting up Plattercliff Road, working through sort of Panorama, ending up in Edgemead, along Edgemead Drive, up to a very busy Bosman's Dam, across the N7 and into Summer Greens. It would appear that traffic that would normally go in and off-ramp at Sable Road to access Century City and Canal Walk, the big mall and all the business complex there, aren't doing that. They're sort of rerouting on alternative routes. We saw it Tuesday, Wednesday, and we see it again today. Some real heavy pressure starting to build, particularly around that sort of Edgemead and Bortosuck area. And, of course, the N7 is very heavy leaving Goodwood. You've got queues trying to get off the N7 into that N1 traffic because the flooding is basically there as you come on, and then others just pushing through and ending up in that heavily congested Bosman's Dam Bridge. So N7 leaving Goodwood is really starting to look a bit heavy as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
9 minutes to 7 the time. The Public Service and Commercial Union of South Africa is now asking that members of Stats SA who do field work, who go into the field to count people, examine how many people are working, etc., and members of the Border Management Agency should be given what really amounts to danger pay. They should qualify for a sort of danger allowance. Tahir Mayepa is the Secretary General of the Public Service and Commercial Union of South Africa. Tahir, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
What are you calling for here?
Well, all what we are calling for, Stephen, is that the workers that are exposed to some form of risk or hazardous situation in their line of duty should also be given danger allowances. And this call, Stephen, is not far-fetched. If you look at the past couple of months, what has happened in Stats SA, and these are the reported cases. There are more which are not reported. 2 ladies, for instance, were held by a community in Tsakani, and they were assaulted during their line of duty. A male employee was also hijacked and dropped at Vosloorus Hospital after he was beaten up by 6 assailants. Another female a male field worker from West Rand was shot through an attempted hijack. Another one in West Rand, a female field worker was brutally beaten by a male respondent with an object dragged through the streets in West Rand. Another field worker using Stats SA was held by SEPS and security cluster security in a high-walled area in Woodmead because of the car that he was driving. It was a suspected car that was used for ATM bombings. Now, these are but few of the incidences that are happening in State SA. And another female was raped, by the way. Because of these field workers, Stephen, I expected to go to areas that even the police are afraid to go into. But because of we need these stats, me and you especially, you as the media and me as a trade unionist, these stats are very important in our line of work. So we expect these field workers to go out there and go into areas that are hazardous, that are risky, for them to be able to give us these statistics.
Tahir, wouldn't it be better for government, instead of spending the money on a danger allowance, to reduce the danger? In other words, to spend the money on better protection or something like that?
Absolutely, Stephen. That's the kind of country we want. But the reality is something different. We know that South Africa, Stephen, is a crime scene. The police are asking for help. I mean, we have seen incidences where the police stations are asking that there must be securities to protect them. So we cannot have a situation where, whilst we're waiting for some government minister to come up with a plan to secure South Africans, we allow our people, our workers, to be killed, to be brutally beaten, to be raped, and nobody is coming to the fore to try and assist them.
But giving people more money doesn't protect them. I mean, why do you want to go this way?
Let me explain. It does, Stephen, because of if you are given a danger allowance, then at least the expectation to be able to allow yourself to protect yourself comes there. You can be able to take measures with that money to protect yourself. But I'm saying, as it stands now, we cannot just sit back. Remember, issue of danger allowance, it's a policy of government. It's not something that PSCU is just calling for it. It's there already. There are officials who are getting this danger. Nurses get danger allowance, for instance. Doctors get danger allowance. Police get danger allowance. So it's a principle that is out there. It's not something that we are just thumbsucking.
Tahir Mayepa, thanks very much indeed, Secretary General of the Public Service and Commercial Union of South Africa.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
5 minutes to 7. You know the number, 086 000 2032. There's been a comment by the new Home Affairs Minister, the DA's Leon Schreiber, that his department will start ramping up inspections of workplaces. Think of restaurants, think of mines, to see how many undocumented foreign nationals are working in these places. You know how intense this issue is. Maggie Poe is the General Secretary at the Bargaining Council for Restaurants, Catering and Allied Trades. Maggie, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
How do you feel about this? Is the Minister doing the right thing here?
I cannot say it's right or wrong. It's Department of Home Affairs. They're supposed to do what they're doing, but the way they're doing it without notifying anybody, it's causing instability at workplaces.
How so? Why is it causing instability?
You just imagine if people come to raid during lunchtime when there are customers there, people are eating. You understand how that disrupts the company. We are not saying that they should not do their job. We have that clause at the Bargaining Council in our main agreement that employers are not supposed to employ undocumented foreign nationals. But we believe that there is a way of dealing with that rather than disrupting businesses. We were not even informed. We fall under the Department of Labour. We thought that the DHA will have, will inform us that this is going to happen so that we can arrange with employers that, look, this is coming. We always told you that you're not supposed to employ undocumented foreign nationals. Now the Department of Home Affairs is intervening now. No, it did not happen.
Maggie, when you drive on the highway, the speed limit is 120. Police are allowed to trap anywhere. They don't have to tell you that they have a speed camera there. They don't have to do it. Sometimes they do. They can have a roadblock anywhere to check if you have a license disc. They don't have to tell you the roadblock is coming. Why does Home Affairs need to tell you that they're going to enforce the law?
I agree, Stephen. Just for... I don't know how to call it, but I just feel that this is not the first time that we're working with DHA. Sometimes when we have problems, we invite them to assist us together with immigration, together with Department of Labour. We just thought that out of working together, they will inform us that, look, we are going to do this, rather than informing the the companies or the restaurants and catering companies themselves, but just to inform us that, look, we are doing this. We normally work with them.
Okay. You say that your companies have a clause, the people who belong to your bargaining council, that they will not employ undocumented foreign nationals.
Yes.
I'm sure you know that they do, and they do it because it's cheaper.
Not necessarily cheaper. Yes, people will think that these undocumented people are employed because companies are going to pay them less. I'm telling you, the main agreement does not allow that. The law of South Africa does not allow that because we do inspections. If you had a chance to come to the bargaining council one day, I can tell you that 90% of people who are coming to complain there are not South Africans, So they know their rights. The moment they're employed, they'll come and complain. The downside of it is that they're scared to join trade unions. You know that bargaining councils are formed by trade unions and employer organization. So without trade unions, we won't have bargaining councils. So these undocumented people, they're scared of joining trade unions because we all know that employers are not pro-trade unions. But we make it a point that everybody who is employed is paid accordingly, according to the main agreement. Well, some employers may think that employing these people who are undocumented will be able to pay them less than minimum salaries. But it's a bit impossible. Yes, I agree. Some may be doing that. But these people, they know their rights. They come and complain and say, I'm underpaid. Then we attend to it. Because even if they're undocumented, they're still employees.
Maggie Poor, thank you, General Secretary at the Bargaining Council for Restaurants, Catering and Allied Trades. Well, it's a very interesting way of looking at all of it. All right, lots more to come. We'll talk about HIV, the number of people who are living with HIV in South Africa slowly going down over time, which is obviously good news. And we'll talk about the impact of HIV on our society. Look at water as well. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's Thursday morning. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
Top stories for this hour. Thabo Bester's ill treatment claims refuted, and the Electoral Court to hear the DA's challenge against Ramaphosa. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The Correctional Services Department has refuted Thabo Bester's claim that he's being ill-treated in prison. The convicted murderer and rapist also says he's not allowed to consult with his legal team. Bester made the allegations during his appearance in the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court yesterday. Bester and others, including his girlfriend, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, face various charges in relation to his escape from prison. The department's National Commissioner, Makgoti Thobagale, says Bester's claims are unfounded.
The problem is with regards to requests that we cannot be able to accede to. For instance, you must have gathered that in court he was granted an opportunity to consult, but him and his lawyer wanted to consult from 10 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is an offender that must still be transported from Bloemfontein to Pretoria. Now, we can't allow that because we need to transport him whilst we can still be able to handle any security risks that we might, be confronted with.
Staying with the Correctional Service, officials have seized a number of contraband and unwanted items at the Johannesburg prison, also known as Sun City. Police were accompanied by prison wardens in conducting the raid last night, where they confiscated items including cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, PlayStation consoles and dagga. The Correctional Services Commissioner Thobagale further elaborates.
We are here as part of the cleanup operation that we have been engaged in. And these are correctional facilities that we have identified because of the information that we've been able to garner. We are actually doing a search for contrabands, objects that are not allowed in correctional facilities, especially in the cells.
The Electoral Court is today expected to hear the DA's challenge against President Cyril Ramaphosa over his address to the nation on the 26th of May. Ramaphosa's address was just 3 days before the watershed elections, which the DA has argued was aimed at garnering votes for the ANC. The former opposition party's requests include reducing the ANC's votes by 1% and imposing a 200,000 fine on the president. Zoleka Qodashe reports.
The DA accuses President Cyril Ramaphosa of abusing his position and public funds to campaign for the ANC. The party adds that Ramaphosa's conduct violated multiple provisions of the Electoral Act, the Electoral Code of Conduct, and the Constitution. The party adds that Ramaphosa's conduct constituted a criminal offence, rendering him liable to a fine or imprisonment of up to 10 years. In the papers before the court, the DA said it would lay a criminal complaint against Ramaphosa. However, there is no indication whether it took this step almost 3 months after the elections. Zoleka Qodashe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
In other news, police in Limpopo have arrested a suspect after 2 teenage girls were raped and one of them strangled to death in Khamukaba village outside Mokopane. The police spokesperson Malesela Ledwaba says the 2 girls were hitchhiking when an unknown motorist gave them a lift. The man then allegedly raped the girls and killed one of them. He adds that the suspect, who is reportedly a repeat sex offender, will appear in court this morning. And finally, looking further afield, President Joe Biden has told Americans that he reveres the office he occupies, but loves his country more. On Sunday, the 81-year-old announced that he would not seek re-election. Sharon Bryce-Peace has more.
President Biden said it had been the honor of his life to serve as president, but that nothing could come in the way of saving the country's democracy, including personal ambition. He urged Americans to unite to protect the country, warning that whether Americans could keep their republic was in their hands. Biden said he would continue to focus on his job of president over the next 6 months, including ending the war in Gaza, while he described Kamala Harris as an experienced, tough, capable and incredible partner to him in the White House, telling the American people that he had made his choice. Now they needed to make theirs. Sherwin Bryce-Peace, SABC News, New York.
Recapping the top story at 7. The Correctional Services Department has refuted Thabo Bester's claim that he's being ill-treated in prison. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Outsurance is the best insurance company in South Africa because they do what they're supposed to do, pay claims. Outsurance has consistently had the best ombudsman for short-term insurance results for the past 11 years and awarded best short-term insurer by News24 for the past 2 years. Why would you want to be with anyone else? SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 or visit outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP, TCs and information online.
Very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby, the Blitzboks Olympic dream fading after their double defeat, and swimming, South Africa's Tatiana Smith is eyeing gold at the Paris 2024 Olympics. All this and more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Reasonably heavy on the N12 this morning, coming into Joburg. It's crashed before Galuli's. The N12 highway parking back towards the Craft Road exit. The N3 north at Heidelberg Road, coming up through Spruitview. There's quite a bit of pressure there this morning, where there hasn't been for a while. Motorists leaving Pietermaritzburg, wondering what the N3's like to Durban. It's quite busy this morning with a broken down truck just south of Ashburton near Umlas Road. Looks like that's just being cleared, actually, so that's an improving situation. In Nunda Road, coming from Newlands, a crash before the N2 highway, so that's busy. M7 from Hunstedman up towards St John's Avenue Bridge, another busy run into Pinetown. And Cape Town, we're looking at some really heavy congestion again around the Edgemead and Boertesak areas. A lot of this to do with the N1 flooding avoidance. Edgemead Drive, Bosmansdam Road, those routes really heavy. Behind that, the N7 queuing out of Goodwood all the way through to that heavily congested Bosmansdam Road Bridge. Day 3 or 4 of some major traffic delays in that area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:07. Good morning. You're with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, a lot more to come. I've been very interested in the spat between Nahawu and Bheki Mtholo, the provincial leader of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. And I mean, in a way, I think some of the coverage has been driven by the insults, and I can understand why some of the insults have been, well, quite funny in a way, I suppose. Some of them, I think, not so. But I think there's something deeper happening underneath it, and we'll focus on that from 8:30. I think it'll be an important conversation. Coming up in the next little while, a big focus on HIV/AIDS, the big World AIDS Conference underway in Munich. There are lots of things to look at there, and then also the issue of water. We'll speak to the Director General of the Department of Water Affairs, a new minister there, Pemi Majordina, taking over. All of that to come. Good morning. It's 7:08.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Well, around the world, the AIDS... Let me start again. Well, while the World AIDS Conference continues in Munich, a new HIV prevalence survey shows that around 12.7% of our country are living with HIV. That's actually down from 14% of the population just 7 years ago. It does still mean, though, that 7.8 million people in South Africa are living with the virus. Around 80% of them are on ARVs. The target is to get 95% of people living with HIV to be on ARVs. So let's get an update on where we are in the fight against HIV and what we still need to do. We start with Professor Salim Abdul Karim, Director of the Centre for the AIDS Programme of Research in South Africa. Professor Abdul Karim, good morning, and thanks once again for your time on SAFM Sunrise.
Very good morning to you, Stephen, and very good morning to all of the listeners.
There seems to be, I suppose, slight progress in containing this disease and reducing the prevalence. Is it significant? I mean, does it show that we're actually making any progress in preventing new infections?
Well, at a global level, the HIV pandemic is behaving like any epidemic should, which is that you get the cases going up, you reach a plateau or where the number of cases stabilizes, and then you get a decline. So it's what we call a bell-shaped curve. So we are now on the decline. So it means no matter what we're doing right now, the number of cases is going to go down. But what has happened is that we have sped it up by the prevention programs, by providing treatment, and all of the activities that have enabled us to bring HIV rates down. At a global level, cases have come down, and that includes Africa, South Africa included. But if we take individual countries, there are some countries where the number of new infections is still going up. And there, for example, in Russia, where the number of cases are going up, we have a great concern. And in places like that, it's largely a political problem because treatment programs that were made available for the gay community in places like Russia and Eastern and Central Asia, those programs have been compromised for political reasons. And so it's really those kinds of initiatives that are preventing us from bringing the global epidemic under better control. Closer to home, the number of individuals living with HIV has gone up slightly, even though the prevalence has come down, and that's the reason for that is our population has gone up. So there's some good news in South Africa, but nothing to really celebrate too much about.
Is it possible to know when we'll get on the right side of the curve? You know, when we'll start to see the number of cases really start to come down in a sort of sustainable and measurable way?
So at a global level, in 2016, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon brought together the whole world to look at the HIV problem and come up with a global plan. And that plan set as a target for 2025, in the year 2025, what we call the 95-95-95 targets. And that basically means that 95% of people living with HIV should know that they have HIV. And that 90% of those people should be on treatment. And 95% of those on treatment should be virally suppressed. In other words, they should have no circulating virus in their blood so they can't transmit the virus. So 95, 95, 95 are the three targets that have been set for 2025. And that's the goal in order to achieve the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal of 2030, which is ending AIDS as a public health threat, which is a 90% reduction in the number of new cases. So the whole world, we are mostly on track to achieve that. The part of the problem is that the amount of resources are dwindling because, people's attention has gone to COVID and to other problems. And so that's one of the big concerns, is that if we take our foot off the pedal right now, we might slide backwards, and that's a big concern. But overall, we're going in the right direction.
So we know how the disease spreads, and you talked about the measures to try and sort of move in the right direction more quickly, and part of it's changing human behavior, using condoms and things like that. If more and more people, so if 95% of people, to use the target, are on antiretrovirals, does that reduce, I'm not quite sure what the right phrase is, their viral load or their level of infectiousness? And so does that scientifically have an impact in actually slowing the disease and preventing new infections? Let me put it more bluntly. If everybody who is HIV positive is taking ARVs, does that stop the disease spreading?
Yeah, so theoretically, if everyone who has HIV, if they are on treatment and virally suppressed, in other words, no detectable virus, technically that will help us bring an end to new infections. The problem is that that's not practically feasible, that we can't really have everybody on treatment because there are many people who have HIV, who are living with HIV, who don't know that they are living with HIV because it's an asymptomatic condition. And because they don't know, they're still spreading the virus. So that's been, one of our big challenges. So there are some countries, if you take Australia as an example, when they've achieved 95, 95, 95, they've basically achieved the 2030 goal. In other words, they brought HIV under control. In other countries that have achieved 95, 95, or very close to it, like Botswana, the number of new infections is still high. And the challenge there is that the number of new infections is being driven by people who don't know that they have HIV. And because they don't know they have HIV, they're still spreading the virus to other people. So 95, 95 in some settings is enough. In other settings, particularly in large epidemics, it's not enough. We have to do more. And that's why the AIDS conference in Munich this week, where they presented the new results of this drug called lenacapavir, becomes so important. It's now a new tool that will enable us not only to look at treatment, in other words, reducing the spread of the virus from those who already have it, but for those who don't have the virus, to protect them from getting it as well.
Professor Salim Abdul Karim, as always, sir, thanks very much indeed for your time. Director of the Centre for the AIDS Programme of Research in South Africa. You were there, SFM, 16 minutes to 7. Let's go to that World AIDS Conference. Now, Mia Malan is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Becker-Cecil Centre for Health Journalism, and in fact in Munich to cover the conference. Mia, good morning to you. We see that in some countries the HIV prevalence is still rising. Here, slowly beginning to decrease. Also, the excitement, as Professor Abdul Karim explained, around a new drug. What are the main themes coming out of the conference about combating HIV?
So one of the main things, Stephen, is, as Professor Karim has mentioned, is ways that we need to find to prevent new infections, because that's really the thing that we want to counter. So that's why there's so much excitement by this conference, by the drug that Professor Karim mentioned, lenacapavir, and that is an injection that you take twice a year and then prevent yourself from getting HIV. And it was actually the lead researcher is Linda Gale-Becko, is from South Africa, and she got a standing ovation yesterday when she presented results that they tested this injection, and not a single woman in the trial who got the injection, the women were between 16 and 25, acquired HIV, in other words, contracted the virus. So we are now at the stage where we're looking at medicines that we can use, that we can take when we're HIV negative to not get infected. Because for years we've looked at trying to change people's behavior to say start sex at a later age or don't have too many partners. And that is not very effective, research has shown. And that's why we're so excited that they are now, they call it biomedical interventions, which means medicines that you can take to prevent yourself from taking HIV. And one of the things of these medicines is we've had a pill in South Africa since 2016, a daily pill that you can take to prevent yourself as well. But the problem with these pills is that you need to take them every single day, and people are not great at adhering. So it's not like a vaccine, it only works when you take it. And that's why there's so much excitement about what researchers call long-acting medicines. In other words, a medicine that you only have to take not that regularly, that stays in your body for a very long time.
The big intervention we've seen in our country that's made such a difference is antiretroviral drugs. And I mean, there can be no doubting the unbelievable impact that they've had, and they've raised life expectancy by literally 10 years from the introduction in public hospitals. The one risk, I mean, most of it I think is funded by our government, but the one risk is that a large portion of that is also funded by the US government through the PEPFAR program. Strange things can happen in the United States, Mia. Do we need to worry about that? Does that make us vulnerable?
Well, South Africa actually funds most of its antiretroviral drugs ourselves. 90% of it is funded by the health department. Where we do get PEPFAR donations is not with treatment, but prevention at the moment. So PEPFAR recently gave us, donated 230,000 doses of another injection that HIV negative people can take. You take it once every 2 months to prevent yourself from getting HIV. And we're likely to start rolling that out towards the end of the year when the donations arrive. Yes, there is, as you've mentioned, a risk. Like, what do we do when we run out of doses? However, that injection is far too expensive for the government to afford. It costs 4 times more than what we can afford. So the choice we need to make is, are we going to have it not at all or take the donations we can get? And there are indications that the Global Fund against AIDS, malaria and TB would also be interested in donating. And hopefully by the time that we run out of doses, these doses will be donated over a period of 2 years. The price of Cap LA, this injection is called Cap LA, might have been reduced significantly, or lenacapavir, the new drug, may start to be phased in. Donors have especially for countries like South Africa, committed quite heavily to buying medicines for countries to prevent HIV. And as you mentioned with ARVs, the treatment, in other words, for HIV positive people, the treatment is not just there to give people longer and healthy lives. It also prevents HIV infection if you use it correctly. But as Professor Karim mentioned, those drugs can only work if we find all the people with HIV and put them onto treatment. And that's quite a costly thing.
Mia Malan, thank you. Founder and editor-in-chief at the Becker Cisa Centre for Health Journalism, one of the people attending that conference in Munich. 20 minutes now after 7.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
Well, there have been so many developments around water in the last few months. As you know, places like Inanda, Verulam, some parts of Joburg have had problems getting enough water. At the same time, a big focus by national government in the last few years to ensure that there will be enough water in the future. And Pemi Majordina has taken over at the Water Affairs Ministries from Senzo Mchunu. Let's just get an update on the situation in the department. Dr. Sean Phillips is the Director General at the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation. Dr. Phillips, good morning, and thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
We all know there are many problems facing your department. This is a long-running issue, and maybe there are two categories: the national problem of making sure there's enough water, and the local problem of getting that water to the right place through councils. And let me just start with the national problem. Are you confident that we have the right measures in place to ensure supply over the next few years? And key to that, of course, is Phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project.
We are currently implementing a wide range of projects around the country in various stages to ensure increased supply of water. Over the last 10 or 15 years, many of those projects were delayed, some for as long as 9 or 10 years. But in recent years, we've accelerated and unblocked all of them. So the major projects which are very important in order to ensure water security, such as the second phase of Lesotho Highlands, to provide additional water into the Vaal River system, to provide more water for Gauteng, is currently under construction. Unfortunately, it was started 9 years later than it should have been, and that means that the demand-supply situation for water in Gauteng is very tight now. And similarly, we've unblocked the Umkomazi project, which is similarly going to provide a lot more water for eThekwini and surrounding municipalities, where the situation is the same, where there's a very tight demand-supply situation, which is resulting in occasional and increasingly frequent water supply disruptions in eThekwini.
The risk, of course, is that you have 2 or 3 years of drought, or you have a very big El Nino situation in Gauteng, for example, and suddenly we could be in real trouble. I mean, does that worry? Does it keep you awake at night?
We plan for that. So lots of people ask us, why are we not taking more water out of the Vaal Dam, for example, now to provide additional water to cities in Gauteng like Johannesburg, because the Vaal Dam is currently full. And the reason why we don't is precisely because of the question that you asked. It would be irresponsible for us to draw more water out of the Vaal River system just because the dams are currently full. We do sophisticated hydrological monitoring, which includes assessing projecting based on weather forecasts, future weather patterns, and we put extraction limits on the amount of water that Rand Water can draw out of the Vaal River system, so that the system will still have enough water in it, even if there is a drought the kind of drought that you're talking about. So we plan for the possibilities of such droughts, and we ensure that the major water systems have enough water, so that there will still be enough water to provide for the basic needs of people, even if there is such a drought.
At the moment, for example, Rand Water has been conducting a big maintenance program, and it can have an impact on people, and obviously the maintenance must happen. Do you have a role in overseeing that at all, or do you leave that to them? And this gets to the heart of one of the issues in water, which is you have the national government, which is yourself. You then have entities like Rand Water, and then you have the council. So there are quite a few role players, so that, when you turn on a tap and Joburg Water comes out of it.
We don't micromanage Rand Water. They're very technically competent, and we're very pleased that they're doing maintenance on their infrastructure. It's very important. If they didn't do this maintenance on their infrastructure, it would deteriorate, and that's part of the problem that we have in the country, and that some municipalities haven't been doing the required maintenance, and that's the reason why their water and sanitation infrastructure has deteriorated. But we do, at a technical level, have regular meetings both with Rand Water and the municipalities. We participate in that. So we do monitor the situation, and we are working with Rand Water and the municipalities on various initiatives to reduce the risk of water supply disruptions in Gauteng, including improving our communication with the public and including putting in place a large-scale awareness program for the public to use water more sparingly, so that we can get through this period until the second phase of Lesotho Highlands comes online in 2028 with a reduced risk of water supply disruptions.
The local problem can be quite complicated, and you have to manage council, sort of. And your previous minister wanted more powers for the department to intervene. He was very frustrated by the situation in eThekwini, for example. Do you know what it seemed to me on the surface that this would be a change? You would have, as a department, more power to intervene in local government when things go wrong. Do you know if that's still going to happen?
Yes, we've proposed amendments to the Water Services Act. The Water Services Act differentiates between water services authorities and water service providers. The water service authority, municipalities are appointed as water services authorities by the Minister of Cogton. 144 municipalities in South Africa are water services authorities. The water services authorities are supposed to ensure that the part of the municipality which actually delivers the service, which is called the water service provider, does it according to minimum standards. Our proposed amendments to the Water Services Act aim at strengthening the role of municipalities as water services authorities, and also they aim at introducing a requirement for those units in the municipalities called the water service providers to have a minimum level of capability. And municipalities will be given time to reach that minimum level of capability, but the proposed amendments are that if a municipality's water service provider does not meet the minimum requirements, then it can be required in terms of the law to appoint another water service provider, be it a water board or a private company or another municipality which does have that capability to provide the service. So those amendments to the Water Services Act have been consulted publicly, and we will be shortly taking the proposed bill to the new cabinet for approval for it to be submitted to Parliament so that we can go through the parliamentary process.
Dr. Sean Phillips, thank you very much indeed. Director General in the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation. Really appreciate the time. 28 minutes now after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. The Blitzboks, they have to beat Japan. Oh, they'll always win against... Oh, no, wait. That doesn't always happen.
What? Oh, yes, it is a tough start, but let's hope that they can secure that big win against Japan in their final pool match today. And we are behind our boys. I mean, they did have losses yesterday to Ireland and New Zealand, placing their quarterfinal hopes in serious doubt. Here's the Blitzbok, Impy Visser, reflecting on the Ireland encounter.
You know, that first half we basically had probably 5% of the ball, and we know in this game that if you don't have ball in hand you can't score tries. So, you know, I think massive defensive effort from our side, but you know, ultimately we need the ball in hand to be able to put points on the board. So I think that was a bit frustrating, and once we got the ball back, immediately we gave it back to them. So yeah, credit to them for holding on to their ball. But
now, South Africa's swimming sensation Tatiana Smith is gearing up for Paris 2024. Smith, who made history at Tokyo 2020 Olympics with gold in the 200-meter breaststroke and silver in the 100 meters, is once again looking set to shine.
I think the 100 is always nice to have as a pre-race for the 200. Sometimes I start enjoying it too much and then I get nervous whether I'm going to survive in the 200 or not. But it is always good to just see where I am and just have that the speed in the beginning to know for the 200.
In the meantime, Australia confirming that 5 members of its Paris Olympic water polo team have tested positive for COVID. Chef de mission Anna Mears says the athletes are following protocols.
The protocols that they are following, little things, for example, like they've been wearing their masks, they're isolating from other team members when they're not training, they're not going into the high volume areas of the allotment like the gym and the performance pantry. And more broadly, we have our respiratory illnesses protocol in place, and we have reinforced this with all of the teams as they arrive into our village.
And finally, the top-ranked tennis player Yannick Sinner withdrawing from the Paris Olympics just days before the event kicks off. The Italian star suffering from tonsillitis. We'll have more sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. All right, a lot more to come. You with SFM leading the conversation. It's 7:30.
Thanks, Stephen. In your news making headlines for this hour, the High Court in Pretoria has declared sections of the Health Act unconstitutional. They relate to an aspect of the National Health Insurance which requires the Health Department to issue a certificate of need. In other news, the Correctional Services Department has refuted Thabo Bester's claim that he's being ill-treated in prison. The convicted murderer and rapist also says he's not allowed to consult with his legal team. And lastly, Donald Trump has attacked Kamala Harris in his first campaign rally since she became the presumptive Democratic Party nominee for November's presidential election. Speaking in North Carolina, the Republican candidate called his rival the most incompetent and radical left vice president in U.S. history. I'll be back at 8 for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
This traffic report is driven by performance. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Some delays down at Mayerton this morning. The R59 running south. If you're on your way towards the Oval, if you're heading down towards Vereeniging, just coming into that central Mayerton area, the R59 is under pressure. The Mike 1 today, very heavy, backing up from Ormonde now through towards Oxford Road in Parktown. It's a lot heavier than normal. And there's some queuing pressure on Jan Smuts. If you're making your way down through Hyde Park in towards Rosebank or vice versa, there's some pretty heavy traffic. It looks like the lights are out at Jan Smuts and Bompus, and that's always guaranteed. That junction when it's down to just pop-up traffic out of absolutely nowhere. It is again this morning. Got a crash now on the M1 South at Midrand, Samrand. So coming through from Bruckfontein, that's all getting pretty heavily backed up on the run through Midrand towards Joburg. Durban, the M4 North, the Southern Freeway, still complicated by the demolition work at China Mall, top end at Brook Street. The M4 is heavier than normal. Queues from Rossborough this morning as you come up in towards central Durban. Cape Town, no change with the flooding. If you're just joining us, the N1 still underwater approaching Sable Road, inbound traffic back through Plattercliff Hill. And again, what we're seeing is just a lot of congestion off the highway. Plattercliff Road, Gilberson, Edgemead Drive, Bosmansdam Road. That whole Bosmansdam Road bridge getting sort of the alternative route into Century City and Canal Walk is heavily backed up. It's having an impact on the N7, pushing a queue right back to Voortrekker Road in the Goodwood area and pushing the southbound side back through Plattercliff Road and back towards Dunoon. That's how bad it is. Marine Drive coming off West Coast Road, Sunningdale through Sunset Beach is a heavy one this morning, and a crash on the R300 running north at Old Powell Road. That's causing quite a backlog from the Delft side up through Kales River into Brackenfell, and still some heavy traffic delays inland a little bit between the Durans and Toes Rafia. Both sides of the N1 heavily backed up due to an earlier truck fire incident. 3 trucks catching fire in a massive crash last night. Traffic still very heavily disrupted in that area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This traffic report is driven by performance. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Purchase 2 or more tyres at participating dealers and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million rand worth of Samsung products ranging from phones, tablets and TVs. Enter now at bridgestone.co.za. T's and C's apply. Bridgestone. Prepare to perform.
The Business Update on SAFM.
In Taoleng, morning again. How are the markets this morning?
Kicking things off in Asia, markets are trading mostly lower following the broadly negative cues from global markets overnight, led by steep declines from tech stocks, which mirrored their peers on the tech-heavy Nasdaq after a few big US tech firms reported disappointing numbers. We've also had lingering concerns over slowing growth in the world's second largest economy, China, that also keeping investors nervous. With that, we saw the Japanese Nikkei down 3% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng falling 1.5%. Over in Wall Street, futures slightly in the green, surprisingly so, considering the deep sell-off we saw yesterday. Traders on that end chewing on earnings and awaiting the US GDP print. On the local front, markets breaking a 2-day winning streak, closing in the red. We saw the all-share losing 0.14% in yesterday's close. Meanwhile, not much action playing out in the currency market, the rand remaining steady at 18.41 against the dollar.
And then inflation hitting the lowest level this year.
That's right, Stephen. Now we are seeing some relief for consumers come through. In June, inflation eased to 5 point. Would be very happy if it was 1%. It eased to 5.1% from 5.2% in May. The main contributors to the annual inflation rate were housing and utilities, which increased 5.5%, and goods and services, which were up 7% year on year. Interestingly, food prices decelerated. In June, food inflation recorded its lowest level in 3.5 years at 4.6%. Essentials like vegetables, eggs, and milk all posted a slowdown in prices. However, prices for hot beverages like tea and coffee continued to accelerate. Back to that headline numbers, economists have welcomed the print, saying consumer prices are edging closer and closer to that 4.5% midpoint, which further supports the case for rate cuts from the SARB. At last week's meeting, Kganyago lowered the bank's inflation outlook for the year to 4.9%, showing that the SARB is also positive about the trajectory of consumer prices.
Nice to hear positivity. And AECI is booking investors warning of a slump in earnings.
So ACI was one of the biggest losers on the local bourse yesterday. Now, the company that specializes in chemicals and mining explosives forecasts a profit slump of up to 60%. It says this is due to a few issues, including lower commodity prices, problems with getting supplies, a slowdown in the mining sector, and once-off costs. The group, however, is upbeat about its prospects, saying that the downturn will only be short-lived. That's as it's making progress with its restructuring process, and expects the efforts focused on and foundation set in the first half of the year to start gaining momentum and realize value in the second half of the year and into next year. Despite the upbeat outlook, markets really punishing that company. ACI's shares closed over 10% lower in yesterday's close.
In Taoleng, thank you. In Taoleng, Lechela. Back tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
22 minutes to 8. Major in Kwatema. Major, hi, good morning. Benjamin Netanyahu, his big speech last night.
Yes, Stephen. But firstly, let me convey my sincere appreciation for touching us or gracing us with your intellect and being on the side of facts all the time instead of opinions.
Thank you, Major.
You are not partial, you're not impartial, you're partial, but partial on the side of facts. You defended facts like a dog defending its bone. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, I'm gonna remember that, like a dog defending his bone. Thank you, Major. All right, Netanyahu last night.
Last night, Steve, look, I'm lost for words actually. That if it was another leader of another country doing what Israel is doing to Palestine, was he going to be welcome in it? America?
Yeah.
The other thing that was going to happen was going to be arrested. But we are witnessing international hypocrisy at its highest stage here. You are one of the people who's mediating between the two factions, but you are siding openly through arms and through embracing. And I think it's high time that the world must move for a neutral member of the Security Council to mediate between the Palestinians and the Israelis. I think that we can have a solution, because the Americans have been given years and years. They've failed. Even a kindergarten child should have long said, "Look, I'm failing here." They have failed. The problem that they're doing is that they want to impose a military solution to a political solution.
Yeah. No, Major, I think that's right. I think you're right. It's all about the military. Major in Kwatema, thank you. And I'm going to remember that illusion for a while. Warren in Stutterheim. Warren, hi, good morning. We used to hear from you years ago. I think a mayor got fired because of something you said once. Hi.
Good morning. Sir, Stephen, I understand that you were born on this day some years ago.
No, Warren, how do you know that?
And I was also born, but we're a different age.
Yes.
We're really a different age. Now, we can either give our ages or we can keep them secret.
Yes.
So you're leaving tomorrow.
Yes.
And a lot of people would love to know how old you are. I'll let you know how old
Warren,
I am.
can I ask you a question? Did one of my producers put you up to this?
No.
No.
I've got a pretty good memory.
How on earth would you know? Never mind.
Somehow, happy birthday to you.
Warren.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Stephen. Happy birthday to you. And this comes from the whole country, my friend. The whole country. And we're going to miss you.
Warren, thank you. That's so kind. And I would sing to you, but they would switch off the radio station if I did. So happy birthday to you too.
Can you let us know, Stephen? I'm 81. I don't mind in the world. I'm 81. Okay, and you would be?
I am slightly over half your age. Next year will be a very big year for me.
Fantastic. Whatever you're going to do, and you can let us know. But if we're going to follow you, I wish you everything of the best, because you make us laugh sometimes. You really do.
Okay. Warren, thank you so much. I'd love to know how you know that. I really would. Warren in Stutterheim, thank you. At 19 minutes to 8.
Okay. So what do we have here? A new dub telenovela on S3? The last one was absolutely amazing, so let's see what this one's about. Paloma, a seamstress and single mother, receives the wrong test results and finds out that she only has 6 months to live. Interesting. She decides to live her best life and do things that she never had the courage to do. Understandable. Paloma unexpectedly finds love from a stranger she slept with. I see. She finds out that she received the wrong results and decides to meet the man who actually has 6 months to live? Wait, what? And right there, I know I'm hooked. Channel your inner drama with Bomb Successful, a life worth living. Weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3.
A century is full of thrilling moments. You can break it down to 10 decades. It is a journey of all kinds of challenges, but winners don't focus on the storm. They look forward to a rainbow. By contrast, South Africa tied its best ever gold medal performance in 100 years. From 1912 in Stockholm to London in 2012. Once again, it was in the pool that Team SA did most of their triumphing, with Cameron van der Berg setting a world record in winning the men's 100-meter breaststroke. And who will ever forget Chad de Clos toppling Michael Phelps in the men's 200-meter butterfly.
It's going to be close. Does he touch? He doesn't. Leclos touched because Phelps got it wrong on the line. It's unbelievable.
Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
7 minutes now to 8 the time. Good morning. The Electricity Subcommittee of the Energy Regulator, NERSA, has now recommended that NERSA reject an application by Eskom to reserve grid capacity for its own renewable power projects or projects managed by the state. In other words, this means that private sector projects can generate electricity and use the grid to sell that electricity to their own customers or homes, and they'll be able to use the grid. Or to put it another way, Eskom will not be able to reserve the grid for itself or parts of the grid that it's not using at the moment, or at least that's how I understand it. Vali Padiachi is the chair of the NRS Association. He understands it far better than I. Vali, good morning and thanks for your time. What did Eskom actually want with this application?
Good morning, Stephen, to you and your listeners, and I'm glad to be back on your show.
Vali Padiachi, I think we might have lost you there. I don't know if you're still there. All right, we do seem to have lost him. Let's see if we're able to just get him on a different line and understand what exactly it is that Eskom wanted with this application, because it is quite one of those issues that may seem quite boring, but is actually very important. Vali, sorry about that. What did Eskom actually want with this application?
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners. I'm glad to be back. Just to very quickly, maybe before I just respond, just to indicate that this decision by the ELS committee is actually a recommendation, so it still has to be confirmed by the NERSA board. Okay, so that's we need to clarify that. Now, what Eskom was requiring from this decision, just to take a step back and very quickly, as we know that we went through a significant period of load shedding, and we're still not out of the woods. So when the NERCOM was established, two of the biggest pillars or significant pillars in the NERCOM or the electricity crisis plan was to get tons of electrons onto the grid and to get the private sector involved. So with that as a precursor, and also just being a bit more legal or technical, Schedule 2 of the ERA, Electricity Regulation Act, was amended, which inter alia allowed for no limit to how much of electrons you could put onto the grid from an IPP perspective. It used to be 10 megawatts, 100 megawatts, and now there's no limit. So given those that as a background, there was a significant uptake or propensity for applications by, let's call it IPPs, to come onto the grid. So Eskom was faced with a situation where They had applications for tons of megawatts of electrons, just to keep it simple, but they had very little space on the grid. And the grid, as we know now, is what I call constipated. It's severely constrained, restrained, etc. So although ESCOM initially was providing access on the first ready, first served, ensuring fairness and transparency and non-discriminatory access, it found that it cannot accommodate all the projects onto the grid, especially the ones through the public procurement process.
Okay, sure. All right, Vali, sorry, it's as you say, it is complicated. Let me try and get to the heart of this. Was ESCOM trying to reserve grid they were not using?
Yes, I think the fact of the matter is that ESCOM, in this application, and by own admission, was wanting to give preferential treatment to reserving a portion of the limited capacity for public sector procurement, as opposed to the private sector,
sure,
which ESCOM feels that there is, and this is debatable, there's unfair competition when you compare those two aspects, Stephen.
Okay, and so I would imagine then, as you say, this is a recommendation, goes to NERSA, and after that, I hate to say this, it'll probably go to court, because it's actually quite a big philosophical discussion here. You've got a limited amount of grid. The grid is needed by everybody. Private sector players are ready to go. ESCOM is not ready to go, and this will be quite a big argument for a long time, I suspect.
Exactly, Stephen. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this is not an ESCOM situation or problem. It could also affect the municipalities. It's not the private sector. It's not the public sector. This is a government challenge where competition has to be given a proper definition. You cannot reduce competition to a linear, absolute, or zero-sum concept, which is happening now. You cannot have winners and losers. In an environment where our energy landscape is beset or plagued with severe, what you call, operational and structural problems. Unless those are resolved, Stephen, this problem is going to continue. And I made this comment the other day when ESCOM objected to the tariff application for the same reason, because it's being viewed, and maybe that's on a clinical basis, where competition is being viewed as a zero-sum game. Stephen.
Vali Pariachi, thank you very much indeed. Expert on power and energy and chair of the NRS Association of South Africa. 10 minutes to 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're on your way to the Vaal, there's some very heavy backlogging going on the R59 southbound just as you come into the central Mayerton area. You might want to off-ramp at Randval, take a side road and avoid that big backlog. Crash on Joburg's N12 westbound just past Xavier Street. Delays down towards Uncle Charlie's. That's coming from Alberton through towards Soweto. There's also some heavy traffic on the Mike 1 this morning from Ormonde through towards Parkdale up towards Oxford Road. And lights throughout Jan Smuts and Bombus, absolutely guaranteed to back things up straight away between Hyde Park and Rosebank, and it is this morning doing that. Coming out of Pretoria down to Joburg, it's pretty heavy. There's a crash on the N1 South, just past the N4, the Rustenburg Highway on-ramp, so just south of Pumalani Plaza. There's a crash and a queue, then a breakdown, stationary truck at Rigel, so that's a queue back to Linwood, and then a collision down by Samrand Road on the N1 South, backlogging traffic from Brockfontein. So it wasn't doing too badly earlier this morning, but it's amazing how quickly things change with all those incidents on the N1 towards Joburg. Durban side, the M4 staying heavily backed up today between Rossborough and the city centre. The M4 Ruth First Highway, other side of Durban's all banged up between the Blue Lagoon and the M41. If you're on your way towards Umhlanga, it's very slow. Cape Town this morning, the N7, that's a standout both sides, very heavy to a very heavily congested Bosmansdown Bridge. Again, it's motorists wanting to get into Canal Walk in Century City that are avoiding the flooding on the N1. So Plattercliff Road, Hill, Basson, Edgemead Drive, Bosman's Dam, it's all heavily backed up in that area, and the N7 really struggling to get off at that Bosman's Dam off-ramp as well. Also, just note there's a bit of a backlog around 35th Avenue. Again, it may be related to flooding after yesterday's rain. 35th Avenue in the Bishop Lavis area of Cape Town, very heavy with delays affecting Stellenbosch Arterial and Robert Sobukwe through that area as well. And just an update between De Durans and Toes Rafia. Traffic still significantly impacted with delays and diversions due to a big truck crash and truck fire incident overnight. The incident's just south of Toes Rafia by the 318 Montague exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
S3. And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dum-da-da-dum-da-da-dum-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dum-da-da-dum-da-da-dum-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Greatness has a way of overcoming all the obstacles. South Africa is readmitted into the International Olympic Committee. The Afrika Dzonga flag was flown by marathoner Dan Dow at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games Barcelona 1992. Ilana Meyer rose to the occasion with a silver medallion in the women's 10,000 meters. While tennis doubles pairing of Wayne Ferreira and Piet Norval grabbed another silver.
Second and silver medalist representing South Africa,
Wayne Ferreira and Piet Norval. Team Africa Chipembe. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
for the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
6 minutes to 7, good morning. The Financial Intelligence Centre says lawyers, estate agents and people who deal in precious gems are standing in the way of getting us out of the Financial Action Task Force's grey list because they're not submitting risk reports. In other words, they're not detailing their own risks, which means we can't convince international authorities to take us off this list. Advocate Jan Augustine, is the Supervision and Enforcement Manager at the Financial Intelligence Centre. Mr. Augustine, good morning and thanks for your time.
Stephen, good morning to you. Good morning to the listeners.
What are lawyers and estate agencies supposed to do? What kind of information are they supposed to be giving you?
You know, it's a very good question to start off with because the questionnaire is nothing sinister. It has a dual purpose. The one is the questionnaire assists the business itself in identifying the risks that it faces for being abused for money laundering and terrorist financing. And on the other hand, it allows for the FIC to supervise the industries correctly in looking at the higher risk institutions and putting our supervision efforts in outreach, awareness, inspections, enforcement on the higher risk entities. And again, it is all about risk for money laundering and terrorist financing purposes.
Is it a form that they have to fill in, a form that you've prepared essentially, or do they just have to give you voluntary information?
No, it is a very structured form. It's a bit lengthy. It's about 165 questions that they need to complete. But it is a structured form. It's very easy to answer. In answering it, it does require of you to have an understanding of your obligations, of course. And to a degree, that's also in part a concern. And specifically, if you don't fully comprehend your money laundering and terrorist financing risks. By going through this process, you will indeed have a better understanding.
Sure. How often do you have to do it?
At the moment, we've issued one on the 31st of March 2023, and attorneys and legal practitioners, trust advocates, and estate agents were dealt with by Directive 6, and they were supposed to have submitted this information already to us on the 31st of May 2023, Stephen. So we've kept the portal open. We've engaged extensively with other regulators and supervisory bodies and even industry bodies, and had specific awareness training for legal practitioners and estate agents in order to get these forms in. And we're pleading with the industry continuously to submit the outstanding forms.
Jan, I'm quite a cynic, I'm afraid to say. If an estate agent or a lawyer is not doing what they're supposed to do, I would automatically think they're trying to hide something from you.
Well, that's the induction one can make, isn't it? We are considering this a very serious issue. We consider those institutions that have not submitted these forms, these questionnaires, the RCRs. We consider them as automatic high risk. So what they are actually doing by not completing and submitting these questionnaires is they are flagging themselves. And we have a three-pronged approach where we are, one, raising specific awareness for these institutions to get them on board. Secondly, conducting targeted inspections in order to identify and see if they are not hiding more than you say. So in those inspections, we would also look at whether they have a risk and management compliance program and whether they've actually done a business risk assessment. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is the enforcement action and the sanctions that we then issue. And then, Stephen, I have to say we have, since November last year, we have a specific process where we have an admission of guilt process where they can then, upon a notice of intention to sanction, submit the RCR questionnaire and pay let me call it a spot fine, an admission of guilt fine. And the aim is specifically to get those RCRs in. But of course, if they do not comply with that, and there are a number of them that haven't complied to that, then it may be far more serious, and we will put it through a formal adjudication process, and we will issue a formal sanction which will be far more than the admission of guilt fine that we've initially proposed.
So you can sanction them directly. You don't have to go through their bodies, the Estate Agency Affairs Board or the bar or anything like that, the Legal Practice Council. You can do it directly. They have to comply with what you're telling them to do.
Stephen, you know that December 2022 has been quite a watershed month for the FIC because we became the sole supervisory body for anti-money laundering and terrorist financing as it pertains to the non-financial sectors. So we are the sole regulator for estate agents and legal practitioners when it comes to the FIC Act. And we can do so directly. We, of course, engage regularly with those regulators as well. And we also try to communicate with the industries through those bodies. And we also keep those regulators informed on the levels of non-compliance in their industries.
Thank you very much indeed. Advocate Jan Augustin is the Supervision and Enforcement Manager at the Financial Intelligence Centre. Just comply. What is it with the state agents anyway? I mean, could someone tell me, please? 086 000 2032. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
Top stories for this hour. Sections of the Health Act declared unconstitutional and Tabo-Bester's ill treatment claims refuted. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The High Court in Pretoria has declared sections of the Health Act unconstitutional. They relate to an aspect of the National Health Insurance which requires the Health Department to issue a certificate of need. The aim is to control where doctors and medical practitioners would operate once the scheme starts. At least 8 applicants, including Solidarity and the Hospital Association of South Africa, approached the court. They successfully challenged the Health Minister, the department and President Cyril Ramaphosa on the validity of the certificate. The Correctional Services Department has refuted Thabo Bester's claim that he's being ill-treated in prison. The convicted murderer and rapist also says he's not allowed to consult with his legal team. Bester made the allegations during his appearance in the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court yesterday. Bester and others, including his girlfriend, Dr. Nandipa Magudumana, face various charges in relation to his escape from prison. The department's National Commissioner, Mahodi Toagale, says Bester's claims are unfounded.
The problem is with regards to requests that we cannot be able to accede to. For instance, you must have gathered that in court he was granted an opportunity to consult, but him and his lawyer wanted to consult from 10 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is an offender that must still be transported from Bloemfontein to Pretoria. Now, we can't allow that because we need to transport him whilst we can still be able to handle any security risks that we might be confronted with.
In other news, South Africa's 200-metre sprinter Luxolo Adams says there wasn't enough consultation before the country's final Olympic team was selected. Adams, who did not make the 2024 Olympic team, is considering taking legal action against Athletics South Africa. South Africa's athletics mother body opted to include 400 metres world record holder Wade van der Kerk in Team South Africa. Adams, who missed 2 crucial races this year, says he deserves to be included.
Yes, I feel betrayed by ASA because I have been communicating with them since the beginning of my hamstring or my calcification in the hamstring. I kept them on the loop to say that was happening even when I started to train back again. And when I was now going back to Europe to compete, I kept them informed.
Meanwhile, Athletics South Africa President James Moloi has acknowledged that they received a letter from Adams' lawyer.
So now, according to the policy of Athletics South Africa, if somebody or the athlete has got a query or a problem, there's an internal structure that where the person is supposed to follow, supposed to call us and sit down with us and lodge his complaint. But he never did that. Instead, and then we received the letter coming from his lawyers that we didn't put him in the team. And then we tried by all means just to explain our story to other people so that they can understand why we didn't put him in the team.
And lastly, looking further afield, Donald Trump has attacked Kamala Harris in his first campaign rally since she became presumptive Democratic Party nominee for November's presidential election. Speaking in North Carolina, the Republican candidate called his rival the most incompetent and radical left vice president in U.S. history. Trump has criticized Harris's policies on reproductive rights and gun control and accused her of failing on immigration.
On my very first day back in the White House, I will terminate every single open border policy of the Biden-Harris administration. And we will seal the border and we will stop Kamala Harris invasion without delay. It'll happen immediately.
Recapping the top story at 8, the High Court in Pretoria has declared sections of the Health Act unconstitutional. They relate to an aspect of the National Health Insurance which requires the Health Department to issue a certificate of need. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's soccer news. Pitso Mosimane honoured with an honorary doctorate. And we also bring you news from the Olympics as Team South Africa's medal charge heats up this weekend. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A reminder, the R59, probably worth avoiding into Meyerton this morning if you're driving down from Joburg onto the Vaal. Very heavy queues approaching the central Meyerton area, off-ramp at Randvaal, and hit some alternative local routes. The Mike 1 under pressure still from Omonde through to Oxford Road. You're going to be asked to sit in some heavy traffic there today. And if you're driving south from Pretoria, it's staying heavy on the M1. A crash now at Linwood Road, and then a breakdown at Rigel. The M1 very heavy from the N4, Emilifeni split, all the way down to that last obstruction at Rigel Avenue. Durban, some heavy pressure in and out of central Durban using the M4. Southern freeways backed up. Kongela through towards CBD. The Ruth First Highway is under some real pressure this morning from Blue Lagoon through towards Umhlanga Rogers Drive might be a better option. And Cape Town still really badly backing up traffic on the N1 inbound. That flooding is just as bad this morning as it was last Friday in front of Canal Walk. So the N1's heavy. Hilbersson, Bosmansdam, Edgemead Drive, all of those routes acting as alternatives under some real pressure. And the N7 badly backed up still from Goodwood, moving up to that heavily congested Bosmansdam Road off-ramp. Also worth a mention, Marine Drive is unusually backed up for this time of morning. If you're leaving Tableview, Bloberg, Parklands, you're going to sit from deep in Sunningdale all the way through to the first set of lights at Sunset Beach. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 8. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Critters. Nice to have you along with us this Thursday morning, just ahead, of course, of Friday. Plenty to come. More about the relationship between the ANC and unions, and I wonder if something has shifted because the ANC has decided to go into a coalition with the Democratic Alliance. It seems like it. We'll talk a bit more about, well, the future, and we'll talk about artificial intelligence on our continent. And Professor Arthur Mutumbura, who is now the director of the Institute for the Future of Knowledge at the University of Johannesburg, but is also, in fact, a future Prime Minister in Zimbabwe. And not very often you speak to someone who's sort of done those things. We'll speak to him in a little while about the future of our continent, try and look at food prices as well. Good morning, you with SFM. Nice to have you along, 8 after 8.
If you love premium documentaries, then we know you love Thursday nights on S3. Broadcaster Alice Levine asks if there's anything such as normal when it comes to sex and sexuality in the 2020s. She meets sexual adventurers up and down Britain, those pushing the boundaries of sex, intimacy and relationships. Tune into Sex Actually, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Channel your inner curiosity with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
S3. There's a song that goes, "Money can't buy me love." And that's true. But then they told us all you need is love, which anybody with a mortgage will tell you most certainly is not true. Love won't pay your parking tickets or your student loan. It's also needy. It requires effort, availability, constant care. But more importantly, love requires time. And while money can't buy you love, it can certainly free up some of your time. Time to spend on the things you love, with the people you love. And if you're looking, maybe even time to find the one you love. That's why, after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do the things you love. And don't you love that about investing? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Futafreak is more than just football. It's a celebration of passion, community, and the magic of Africa's beautiful game. Futafreak goes beyond the final score. Uncover the heart of the game with special profile segments, taking you on a captivating journey across the continent. Experience the fabric of African football. Futafreak every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. on SABC1 and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Good morning, 10 after 8 the time. Well, this conversation brought to you by the South African music rights organisation SAMRO, and SAMRO's Music Creation Support Fund is reaching new heights as 120 members receive 3 million rand in micro grants fostering creativity and innovation in the music industry. Lesego Mafora is the Special Project Manager at SAMRO. Lesego, good morning.
Stephen, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. We see SAMRO as a collecting rights organisation. In other words, you collect the money for musicians. That's how it works, right?
That's correct.
And your Music Creation Support Fund program, what are you trying to do?
Stephen, I think the thing we're trying to do with music, with the MCSF, which is what we call it for short, is really to opportunities for our artists to get their music out there. I think one of the challenges that our creators face is that they struggle with the costs getting music out there, with the costs of recording, but also things like paying session artists. So this is what we're trying to do, give them an opportunity to be able to generate royalties. We can improve their sustainability.
I mean, in some ways, it's never been easier to be a musician. You can do recordings on your phone. You can do all sorts of things that you couldn't do at home. In some ways, it's become much harder because there's so much music out there. To actually do it professionally, it becomes more and more difficult to actually have a going career.
And I think this is what we're trying to do. And I think if you look at the scale of the program, which since 2021, we've enabled ourselves to assist over 400 of our full and associate members. And you're right around the impact that technology is having on the market, because the globalization of content and the internet has come with both pitfalls, but also opportunities. So I think what we're trying to do here is to allow our members to be able to take advantage of what's available out there. It's much easier to access music. If you remember back in the day, you had to buy a CD. These days, you just have the music on your device ready to stream at any point. So what we are leading towards is giving our artists an opportunity to want to create new music, but also through some of the content and support we provide, allow them to be able to access the market.
It's 120 people. They divide the 3 million rand between them. How did you announce it? How did you decide who gets the money?
Right. So the adjudication for this is done by an external panel. So we don't, as SAMRO, actually adjudicate. So our panel is made up of various industry experts, journalists, legal experts, but also music industry professionals, so people who are musicians themselves. So we try to be, that the whole process is geared to being unbiased as best as possible, because I think the fact that there's this access to funds means that, the program has grown in popularity over the past 4 years. This year we saw an increase in applications of 56%. Last year it was an increase of 45%. So the hunger is out there from creators to be able to get some level of support. And while we can't help everybody, we do have a system of rotation where if you are awarded in 1 year, you have to skip about 3 years before you're eligible for any other type of support from SAMRO.
Okay, now that does make sense. And the full list, is it on your website?
The full list is on the website. You can check it on our website, samro.org.za, but also on our social media channels. If you scroll through our timeline, you'll see we've made announcements across Facebook and Twitter, and of course on the SAMRO website.
And then supporting music creators, through the fund, what impact do you think it's going to have on developing the industry? And it's tough for musicians, I think.
It is really tough for musicians. The creative industry is a very difficult space simply because it is not structured like other formal careers. Creators face a challenge in terms of month-to-month living. They go through points where they make no income, and then they make parts where they make a lot of income if they're successful. But I think the primary barrier to a lot of our creators is just access, having the funds to be able to go into a studio, to be able to get recording artists, to be able to create artwork for their music. And what we're really trying to do is to catalyze. We're not trying to, we're not saying that we're going to give everybody a chance, but the people that do qualify, we do try to impact their careers the best way that we can.
Lesego Mafora, thank you. Special Projects Manager at the Southern African Music Rights Organisation, SAMRO. And of course, that conversation brought to you by SAMRO. Discover how SAMRO's dedication to championing diversity and gender equality shines through the Music Creation Support Fund, providing opportunities for all music creators to thrive.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
Well, confirmation yesterday that food price inflation finally is coming down. The impact that food price inflation's had on you over the years has been immense. It's now lower than it's been in 4 years. In other words, since the start of the pandemic. Patrick Kelly is the Chief Director for Price Statistics at Statistics SA. Patrick, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
Which foods are sort of really beginning to see food price inflation coming down very dramatically?
Well, we've seen particularly sugar products, vegetables, fruit, milk, the dairy products, and fish as well. So these are some of the products that are starting to slow down. Perhaps if we just took a step back, I mean, we did see, as you mentioned, lower inflation rates for food and most other products during the COVID period. And in fact, for food, that had already started slowing down in 2019 before COVID hit us. But then we ramped up and we hit a high of 14% in March 2023 for food inflation specifically. So we have really started to see a really substantial drawdown on food inflation.
Bread and cereal still seems pretty high, though, which is a little bit of a surprise. But I mean, bread in particular is still very important.
Oh, no, of course. So bread and cereals hit an inflation rate of 5.2%, and that was up from 3.9% the month before. So bread and cereals includes kind of bread products, but also maize and other grains. And in particular, maize meal products have jumped up quite a bit. So, for example, maize meal itself, 3.3% just between May and June. SAMP, 3% in that same time period. And this kind of correlates with what we're seeing on our other main index, the producer price index, which records the price of goods as they leave the factory. And here we recorded a 7.2% monthly increase for maize products. So it does seem that there's kind of a widespread increase in maize in particular.
And Patrick, I mean, I found this very disturbing. Coffee inflation is very high. Why?
Yeah, I'm also devastated. I think this is a worldwide trend. Obviously, we import our coffee. There's general supply constraint problems, land to grow coffee trees. So yeah, I mean, this is something that's hitting us. It's not only coffee. We also see tea products up quite significantly. So just in the month, we saw coffee prices going up by 2.2%. Tea prices kind of around the 3% mark. Even drinking chocolate up 3.5%. So generally, what we call non-alcoholic beverages are up quite substantially. They're a rate of 16.5%. So that's the highest of all of our food groups.
I know you don't look in the future, Patrick. That's not your job. You look at the past. But if you look sort of at the past over a longer term, the way that we saw food prices as the pandemic sort of slowly started to end, we really saw food price inflation taking hold, and now food prices are beginning to ease. Has this been the kind of longest sustained period of high food price inflation that we've seen in sort of recent memory? I can't remember a time quite like this.
Well, as you say, coming out of COVID, it went up quite a bit. But I would say that generally we do see food inflation at around the kind of 3, 4, 5% level historically, and it sort of vacillates around that. I mean, if I just look back, 2018, we were at about 3%. So it does, it is kind of typically around that level. And food inflation, as it is quite a big element of household spending, does influence the overall rates of inflation as well.
Patrick Kelly, thank you, Chief Director for Price Statistics at Stats SA. Really appreciate the time.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
20 minutes after 8. Well, a big event this week at the University of Johannesburg and the China Media Group, looking at what they describe as opportunities arising from new quality productive forces, talking essentially about using technology and partnerships with China and South Africa to grow our economy. The director at the Institute for the Future of Knowledge at the University of Johannesburg is Professor Arthur Mutumbara. You may remember him actually as a Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. He joins us now. Professor Mutumbara, good morning to you, sir, and thank you very much for your time.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with your listeners I'm former Deputy Prime Minister, not Prime Minister. Deputy.
I wondered about that. I saw two different things. My apologies. Not very often people actually confirm something when I get it the wrong way around. So thank you for your honesty. We talk about and we hear about artificial intelligence and we hear about the fourth industrial revolution. I think for most of us, all it means is that something fancy happens on our cell phones. How do you believe we can really harness these things to grow our economy? And within that, I'm always worried that we're being left behind.
Now, the artificial intelligence revolution is going to affect every sector: agriculture, mining, healthcare, tourism and hospitality, education, governance. So it is important that Africans, in particular South Africans, embrace artificial intelligence because it is going to increase productivity, efficiency, and the quality of life of all people. So it is important that we understand that we're dealing with a transformative technology called artificial intelligence.
I think sometimes we feel almost, yes, we know it's happening in America, it's not happening here. It's kind of hard to get to grips with it. Do you think it's actually having an impact on us already?
Yes, I know that concern. There's an opportunity to leapfrog. Think about wireless telephony. When wireless telephony came through, we were able to combine wireless telephony and banking and produce mobile banking. So when you say M-Pesa in Kenya, when you say EcoCash in Zimbabwe, there's nothing in Japan, there's nothing in New York, there's nothing in London that is as good as M-Pesa or EcoCash. So although AI is very advanced, there's an opportunity for us as Africans to adopt and actually leapfrog. Because of our poverty, because of our lack of development, some of these technologies can be easier to apply, cheaper to apply, and more effective in our environment. So yes, there's an opportunity for us as Africans to leapfrog and apply artificial intelligence to drive our productivity in agriculture, in mining, in healthcare, in finance, and in banking. There is an opportunity for us to be players as Africans. But more importantly, we should also be producing AI. We must also be developing the algorithms and the systems because we can't leave that to Silicon Valley. The African must be a creator of AI, an owner of AI. So in addition to using AI, we must also produce AI. But beyond that, we must also participate in what is called the semiconductor physics. AI is run by hardware, what are called chips. NPUs, GPUs, CPUs. There's a lot of money that is being made in the hardware required to power AI. The African must also play a role in the semiconductor industry that drives AI.
I worry that our education system is not producing and is not actually where it needs to be to ensure that people are able to live in this new environment. I mean, yes, there'll be some people who can still take advantage of all of this and maybe drive it further. But actually, for many people, the ability to get involved in this, I mean, they're going to be held back simply because of their education.
Very important, very important. We need to think about new digital skills, new digital competencies, new digital capabilities. We need to change our educational system so that we produce the relevant skills, the relevant competencies and capabilities that are required for us to be players in the AI revolution. So it can't be business as usual in the way we train our people, in the way we do high school education, and the way we do higher education as well. It has to be a different approach to skills, competencies, and capabilities. Also, we're moving away from the idea of a certificate. Don't show me your certificate. Show me what you can do. What are your skills? What are your competencies? That is the new language of the AI revolution.
I mean, I love that. I mean, of course, education is important. Of course, qualifications are important. But can you do it or not really is what matters. Can you fix my car or not? That's what really matters.
Exactly. But more than that, we are now saying that we must empower young people with problem-solving skills. We must empower them with the ability to learn how to learn. We must also help them have the capacity to do structured thinking. So there are new skills that we need if we're going to prosper in the AI revolution.
Is our government doing enough to make sure that we are not left behind? I mean, there have been all sorts of public statements, but every government around the world says they want to take advantage of artificial intelligence. Is our government, the Department of Communications, etc., are they up to doing what they're supposed to be doing?
They're trying. There is a work to produce an AI policy framework. There's work to do what we call an AI national vision. There's a work that is being done to produce an AI strategy. But beyond the nation state, we must think about the region. What is the SADC approach to AI? What is the SADC AI vision? What is the African Union approach to AI? Because scale matters. So we'll be able to succeed better if we work in our regional blocks, ECOWAS, East African Community, SADC, and more importantly, the African Union. Scale does matter. That is the lesson from China, by the way. The Chinese are 1.4 billion Chinese working together as one economy. They are also using technology. Technology is very important. But more importantly, the lesson from China is that we need competent, ethical, technocratic leadership. We miss that in Africa. We have average people, mediocre people running countries. We have corrupt people running countries. AI would require good governance. AI would require democracy. AI would require that we run our basic issues, foundational matters, in a manner that creates an environment where technology can be used as a driver of economies.
Professor Arthur Mutumbara, thank you very much indeed, sir. Really appreciate the time. Director at the Institute for the Future of Knowledge at the University of Johannesburg and a former Deputy Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Talking of education, what's Pitso Mosimani's first name?
It's Doctor.
Doctor.
A huge honor for our legendary coach, celebrating his incredible impact on football. And this is an honorary doctorate from the University of Johannesburg, recognizing Mosimane. He started his coaching career with SuperSport United, and that was in 2001. He's led teams like Mamelodi Sundowns and Al Ahly to multiple championships, including 5 Premiership titles and 3 CAF Champions League trophies. This accolade celebrates his influence on the sport and his role as a unifier to South African football. Let's hear from Pitso Mosimane himself on how sport unifies communities.
I think Nelson Mandela had a quote also on sports. He's a nation builder. If you want the country to be together, bring football, bring sports. And everywhere I've been, it's either politics, religion, and sports, but mostly football, of course. But what can you say when you just get acknowledged and humbled by University of Johannesburg, the number one university in the country and continental? It's not me who's saying that. They said it, and it's a fact.
That's Dr. Pitso Mosimane on Sunrise. Now, soccer, where crowd trouble forced the first football match of the Olympics to be suspended for nearly 2 hours amid chaotic and worrying scenes, with the game eventually completed in an empty stadium. After the resulting crowd trouble, play resumed, and this was after a lengthy delay with no fans present, VAR ruling out Argentina's equaliser, with Morocco securing a 2-1 victory. Another match saw Spain beating Uzbekistan 2-1 in their opening match of Group C. Tennis, the player top seed Coco Gauff has been selected as the female flag bearer for Team USA at tomorrow's Olympic Games opening ceremony in Paris. The 20-year-old Grand Slam winner joins basketball superstar LeBron James, who was selected as the male flag bearer. Gauff, who won the 2023 US Open, is competing at her first Olympic Games. Serena Williams was the last American to win Olympic gold in the women's singles, and that was at London 2012. That's how we wrap up Sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more around 12:30 on SAFM. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The war of words between parts of the ANC and parts of Nahamu. What's really going on? Why is there a much deeper story here? That's next. You're with SAFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Thanks, Stephen. Top stories for this hour. The South African Police Service is one of the reasons Interpol's Secretary General Jurgen Stock is visiting the country is to hand over mobile devices to police to help them to fight cross-border crime. Stock, who's on a 2-day working visit, will also seek to strengthen police cooperation and assess progress made in fighting transnational organized crime. In other news, the High Court in Pretoria has declared sections of the Health Act unconstitutional. They relate to an aspect of the National Health Insurance which requires the Health Department to issue a certificate of need. And lastly, looking further afield, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told a joint session of the US Congress that his country will have total victory over Hamas in Gaza. Netanyahu insisted Israel would retain security control over the Palestinian territory after the war. I'll be back at 9 for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy coming out of Pretoria this hour. There's a crash by Linwood Road on the N1 South, and then a breakdown down by Rigel, which looks like it's probably just being clear, but it did back things up. So it's really just that collision now at Linwood Road, which is causing a slowdown coming through from the N4 Emelafeli Highway split. R59 on your way to Mayerton, still worth avoiding, off ramp at Randval, and hit an alternative side route to get down into the Val, bypassing the big queue approaching Mayerton area. Durban easing up the M4, a little bit slow into the city centre. That's on the Southern Freeway, but the big queues from Congela and Bilo and Rossra thing of the past this morning. That's good news. Cape Town, the M1 inbound. I've had a look at the cameras of the flooding. It looks worse, actually, this morning. Keep in mind there's been flooding on the N1 since about Friday of last week, and this morning it does look to be a little bit heavier, I guess. The M1 inbound still badly backed up from Plattekloof Road. N7, very heavy northbound. There's queues, really heavy queues from Goodwood. The problem going north up the N7 is motorists struggling to get off and into that N1 queue, and others struggling to get off at a very heavily congested Bosmansdam Road. There's traffic all over that Bosmansdam bridge system. Behind that Edgemead Drive, out of Edgemead's a heavy queue as well again today. And just taking Cape Town, West Coast Road, Marine Drive. If you're leaving Tableview, Bloberg, that's an unusual backlog for this time of morning. Still packed down towards the first lights at Sunset Beach. And lengthy queues are still with us between the Durans and Toes Rafia at last night's major truck crash scene. You may well find yourself being diverted. We can see some extra traffic around Trudeau Pass and Michelle's Pass around the sort of Cirrus options, the R46. So big delays on the N1 and some alternative route action as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9. The time for your mediated conversation this morning. Over the last few days, you've heard a series of interviews about what looks like a simple public spat between a senior leader in the ANC and the trade union Nahawu. It seems to have started when the ANC's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary Bheki Mtholo said over the weekend Nahawu members were responsible for the bad services people get in government offices. He particularly mentioned Home Affairs, SASSA offices and the Labour Department. Then Nahawu hit back saying Mtholo was a madman and had a history of mental illness. I don't think that's true. They also claimed that the government budget cuts had led to poor services. Underneath this, it seems maybe a bigger story. It seems that members of Nahawu and the Tripartite Alliance are unhappy the ANC has agreed to work with the DA and the National Coalition, and this may be well driving some of the frustration that we're seeing. So then what's happened so far? What's driving it? And could there be more consequences from the ANC's decision to work with the DA? First this morning, Ayanda Zulu is the Provincial Secretary of Nahawu in KwaZulu-Natal. Bheki Mtholo is the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. You'll hear excerpts of interviews they've given us this week. Then, Mbazima Shilowa is the former Premier of Gauteng and a former General Secretary of COSATU, now a columnist at News 24. And Dr. Ibrahim Harvey is a former unionist and political analyst. We start then with Ayanda Zulu, the Nahawu Provincial Secretary from KwaZulu-Natal, who spoke to us on Monday.
Well, we have given Mr. Mtholo 48 hours to make a public apology on the basis that the statement that he has made is unfortunate and is also defamating workers who are severely understaffed. If you look at all the departments that you have mentioned, we went to Home Affairs, which is one of the departments that is severely understaffed. We spoke about SASSA, we spoke about labor inspectors. All these departments, even the ministers that are responsible for this department on public platforms, because of the government's austerity measures of downsizing the public service, they have agreed that they are severely understaffed. That is why there are long queues. If Mr. Mtholo is someone who understands how the public service works, he would have understood. That is why in our statement we are very clear that we are responding to a madman So now, as a progressive union, we have been having some campaigns. There's a campaign that we always work with the community-based organization, including leadership. But Mr. Mdala will not know because he is someone who does not pay attention to organizational issues called public service delivery campaign that talks about issues that relate to public service in departments like your health, your home affairs. That is on how to deal with the issue of long queues.
But, I mean, do all of your members treat people who need government services with respect? We hear stories. People say, I waited for hours. People weren't doing anything. Sometimes people say I was insulted by staff at these offices. I mean, they're not all your members, but do you believe all of your members are treating people who need services with respect?
Definitely. Remember that in the public service, NEHAW is not the only union that is organizing. So it's difficult to make a conclusion about the public service space to say NEHAW is doing 1, 2, and 3. But I can assure you that all those who are members of NEHAW are patriotic citizens. That is why, as part of the work that we do as the union, is to ensure that our members understand that task at hand, but also they are progressive, patriotic citizens, that they know that at the point of production, their responsibility is to provide services to our people, but not to withstand the severely stress our members. Because one of the things that many people do not want to appreciate is the impact of the downsizing, the austerity measures, the shortage of staff have in the public service, which result on long queues.
Ayanda Zulu, the Provincial Secretary for KwaZulu-Natal for NEHAW, was speaking to us earlier this week. Well, Bheki Mtolo, the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, responded to us yesterday explaining why he had made the comments that he did.
They all had a political school, and then they bash the ANC. They say the ANC has sold out black people because of the partners it has chosen to work within the national government of national unity. And then they've been peddling this lie for the longest time, and nobody has ever have courage to contest them, and also show that they are propagating of so much love for so-called black people is not based on evidence. Then I was trying to say to the community I was addressing, because that was my branch. It was my branch meeting of the ANC. I was saying now, why it project that it loves black people is the same now when you go to a hospital. Its members treat you badly. They don't give you enough service. It's the same now when you go to clinics. Every time when you come to your meetings, you complain about how bad you are treated in clinics, how bad you are treated in home affairs. It's the same now when I was a mayor in Kokstad. Families could not bury their loved ones at a scheduled time, at certain particular weekend, because they were treated badly. They could not get a death certificate, and then they could not get burial orders. It's the same now that during the strike in KwaZulu-Natal, they removed a sick baby from an ambulance, rushed to Grace Hospital. It's the same now that was blocking all hospitals, so that the very same poor, the very same black people can't afford private hospitals, who are relying on the public care facilities. They were stopped almost a week to access those services. Then the love that they project of black people is not based on evidence. Their behavior is in serious variance on that. But we're also saying, it's not like SATU, for example. Let's go to SATU in the basic education, SATU and NATO. SATU and NATO can say they are clear, they can go to schools. Schools in South Africa, their normal hours end at 2. But you will know that in rural schools, particularly where they predominantly in the townships that they serve black people, SATU and NATO, while they contest each other, but they agree on improving the life of a black child, they will go in extra hours, they will go to winter schools, winter camps, and they've improved the results, and they will never want overtime, they will never want to be extra paid. They do that as a service because they don't commodify society. They don't see society as a
All right.
commodity that in serving society they must gain extra than what they should get.
Okay, Becky, I think you've made your point. They said that you were a madman. You told them yesterday to go and jump off a cliff. And you're all part of the same alliance, right? Just to be clear, this is how friends speak about friends.
Listen, Stephen. You must know that in a public discourse and a debate, once you win the debate in terms of intellectual argument, logical argument, the only thing that is available to your opponent is insults. Then we are part of that. We have been insulted for many times since we're young. We're older now. Then we don't have to respond to insult. But it's a show that if they can't contest what I'm saying, because you can go to any township, Stephen. I can tell you, go to Soweto. Just get 500 people. Ask them how are they treated in hospitals. How are they treated in clinics. The old mothers there, they will tell you horrible stories. I'm talking about black, poor old mothers. They will tell you about horrible stories, how members treat them in hospitals and in clinics.
Becky Mtolo, the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary, speaking to us yesterday. You're with SFM, 19 minutes to 9. All right, that's what's happened. What's really going on? The subject of your mediated conversation. Bazima Shalowa is former Premier of Gauteng and former General Secretary of COSATU. And Bazima, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
On the surface, we have these insults. It seems to be an argument about is Nahawu responsible for this or that. But the context, the ANC working with the DA, the Nahawu political school last week, what's really going on here?
Yes, I think that the key thing is the pain of loss of power across all partners in the alliance, with no one wanting to take responsibility for how bad the ANC had fared. But also, secondly, the ANC deciding to go the route of the GNU. And really, GNU, it's code word for saying, look, we will go with the DA rather than with MKP and EFF. And I think that's really what is at the heart of this discussion. Because when the deputy president of COSATU, but who is also the president of Nahawu, took the platform at their political school, he pulled no punches. He went straight into saying, look, this is where we are. The ANC have gone into a GNU with a DA, but that they also have given the DA strategic ministries. I am not sure which ministry for them is not strategic. So I guess you are right. The background is about this GNU, but I would argue that it's more about the fact that they have not come to terms with the fact that they have lost power, and it's going to take a long time to go back into that. And my view is that it is a pity they are spending a lot of time sniping at each other instead of sitting down and saying, for instance, we are COSATU unions, we organize in key economic centers of power, yet that's where the ANC have lost. It means we didn't do our work, or if we did, workers don't believe us anymore.
I mean, it seems to me in a way, and this has happened before. I think Gwede Mantashe 10 years ago accused, when he was Secretary General of the ANC, accused SATU members of having children in Model C schools and sort of neglecting the township children they were supposed to teach. I'm paraphrasing there, but I think that was basically the point. But for Mtolo to basically blame a COSATU union for bad government services, isn't that in a way kicking the entire alliance? What I'm trying to get to is there's a sense of frustration that is now being turned inside the alliance that will be much more damaging.
Yes, indeed, it is. That's why I say it's important that they look beyond this. But on the other hand, what Becky does not want to accept, even as he may be saying some of the right thing about bad service by Nahawu or COSATU members in the public service, he should also acknowledge that, firstly, the austerity measures by the government means that there are posts in which there are fewer workers, and therefore most workers will be stressed, will be overstressed. Similarly, you can't blame workers for the bad service at Home Affairs when IT is not working. But also you need more inspectors, labor inspectors, if you're going to do any work. So he's also kicking the can. But I think it is the frustrations that are there because even though these things have been raised before, you're right about Mantashe, I also know that when I was General Secretary of COSATU, issues would have been discussed inside COSATU about the conduct, whether of NEHAWU, of SAMU, of SATU during strikes, and the impact that it normally has more on black communities and less, quote-unquote, on white communities. So that has always been there. But I think this time it's made worse by the fact that they can't accept that they didn't do well, that the ANC got 40%, that in Gauteng they've become, reduced in numbers, and similarly in KZN, that therefore they've got to work with everybody else. And instead of saying, this is the reality, let's look at it and work on it for the next 5 years, but let's see how we can be able to reverse it so that we move out of it. They're just going for each other.
Before the election, the COSATU president, Zingiswa Losi, was asked at a May Day rally. She was asked if she would prefer the ANC to work with the EFF in a coalition or the DA in a coalition. And she said the EFF, quite strongly. And then this week, she said, there was an interview on Times Live, and she said the EFF was not a party of the left, not really a party of the left. And then, and this was very strange to me, we heard from Helen Zille yesterday. She referred to, and we referred in the conversation to, criticism that seemed to be levelled against her by Mantashe now as chair of the ANC, of course. Zingiswa Losi in this interview seemed to support Helen Zille, said she had the right to demand accountability from her deployees in government. So Losi seems to have gone from saying the ANC should work with the EFF to really supporting the ANC's decision. And she's the president of COSATU. Why would she change her mind?
I think that Losi has, it's one of the few that have accepted the reality, one of the loss of power, that even though she would have preferred that they work with the EFF, the ANC have gone with the DA. But I think what she was saying was in response to the point that have been said that the ANC should have chosen the EFF because they are a left party, because they are progressive. And she was saying there's nothing less left and nothing less progressive about it. But the irony is that in the position she's taking now, Shingange is taking a different position. But even more, she's in the Central Committee of the SACP, and Solima Paela is taking a different route that says rather work with MKP and EFF. And that's why I'm saying it is the best pangs of the loss of power. And the sooner they sit down, do a thorough analysis and say, all of us did not do well, the people don't believe us anymore, we have a responsibility to go back to them, ensure they believe us, what is it that we are all going to do?
Do you think the DA knew that if it accepted working in a coalition of government, if it accepted the offer from the ANC, it could further damage the alliance in this way?
I've got no doubt that they knew that. I also have got no doubt that the reason why they moved up early to accept working with the ANC, even before the modalities were in place, was because they knew that both the DA and the EFF had said they won't work with the ANC if the other is there. While the EFF was still thinking, what can we do? The DA moved in there knowing that once we have agreed, the EFF is going to either stay out or insist on only working with the ANC if we are outside, and that a sizable number in the NEC of the ANC would be able to say, in the best interest of the country, maybe even in terms of how some in the economy and business may feel, rather let's go with the ANC. So yes, it was a calculated move on the side of the DA.
Mbazima Shilowa, thank you. Former Premier of Gauteng, former General Secretary of COSATU, now a News 24 columnist. In a moment, Dr. Ibrahim Harvey. You're with SAFM, 9 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, if you're coming through the Durham Plaza on Pretoria's N4, this is the Rustenburg Highway, Bakwena Highway, if you like. There's heavy backlogs from the plaza down towards the N1 South Ramp. It's a crash basically as you come off the N4 onto the N1. So some real queuing pressure at that particular scene. Also a collision on the N1 North in Pretoria by the R21. Traffic parking back through to Boerta Avenue territory. Joburg's N3 quite slow this morning. Limbro Park up into the Beclu interchange. And lights are out Jan Smuts and Bompus. And that always causes a delay between Rosebank and Hyde Park, and it is again this morning. Both ways very slow. Durban side, the M4, the Southern Freeway, which was queuing up through Congilla, that's all eased quite nicely. The M4, the other side of Durban, which had an issue around the Virginia Airport, that's also cleared. If you're on your way towards Umhlanga, it's looking good. The N2, there is a crash just south of Umhlanga down towards the KwaMashu exit, so a little bit of queuing pressure arriving into that particular scene. Cape Town looks like or Western Cape, at least outside Cape Town, looks like the N1 has been reopened between Taduras and Toes River. There was a big truck crash last night and some heavy delays, but it does seem to be easing through there. And if you're driving into Cape Town's N1 flooded section at Sable Road, traffic remains heavy from Plattercliff Hill. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
8 minutes now to 9. The time continuing your mediated conversation around what's really going on in what seems to be a dispute between parts of the union movement and the ANC, or parts of the ANC, I should say. Dr. Ibrahim Harvey is a former unionist himself and a political analyst. Dr. Harvey, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks. Good to be with you.
What does this tell us about how political power has changed? I mean, for years and years and years, unions and the SACP have debated should they stay with the ANC or not. Now it seems that the results of the election are having a huge impact on the alliance.
Yes, but thanks, Stephen. But you must remember that this thing is coming to a head. Let me tell you, the crisis in this ANC alliance begins already in the 1990s after RDP was unceremoniously dumped and gave us adopted 3 months later, June 1996. Already since then, massive retrenchment affecting the public sector in all areas from 1996 until 2000. So there's a deep history. But let me tell you something. Mtolo's attack on workers is outrageously an insult to injury. That's what it is. Because he fails here. It's not the first time also the attacks workers. You'll see them in our statement. And it's not only him. Go and see what Ramaphosa himself said at the January 8th statement in Kimberley in 2021. He called workers a bunch of idiots. So, this thing that the ANC is pro-poor policy is an abysmal untruth. But, Stephen, the ANC, what he doesn't do is to hang out his dirty linen in public. Let me tell you where the crisis really began in the ANC alliance. When the ANC lost Gauteng, the powerhouse of production and nerve center of the economy, in both the 2016 and 2021 elections, you didn't see much about it, but it seriously affected the stability of the alliance. I mean, you must remember that austerity measures is ideologically, it is the driving thing of neoliberalism, budgetary cuts. So these austerity measures don't happen in a vacuum. It's an expression of the neoliberal policy regime of the ANC. I mean, this thing that you refer to about Losi, she jives. It's not the first time she jives, and her jive is actually an expression. It's an expression in a more complex dynamic of what is happening. Our politics is shifting very seriously and decisively. I mean, the ANC has never lost power in the first time to 29. It's going to have massive effect. But the ANC inviting the DA, they had to do that to a large extent because that was a reflection of the election results, in terms of what the DA obtained. But going forward, I can tell you, if it didn't come to a head before, the ANC in this GNU with the DA is going to bring the crisis in the alliance to a head. And something is going to happen. Whether this alliance will continue, I don't know. But you can see very clearly from the Labour, particularly COSATU side, there's a lot of disgruntlement with this DA-ANC GNU.
Isn't the problem for unions, though, that their power relative to the ANC has been declining and declining? I mean, numbers are down. COSATU is really becoming a public sector federation rather than a private sector federation, or rather than a mixed federation. And so, yes, unions might want to walk away, but they'll be left with no political power if they do that.
Well, the thing is, the answer lies in actually, developing a new politics for Labour for this country. And they have to look beyond the ANC. You can see how deeply troubled the alliance is now. And look instead towards the other trade union affiliates, NACTU, for FEDUSA, etc. And, something that's been called for long and very little progress at NEDVAC. But I can tell you, Stephen, the GNU thing, no matter what Ramaphosa and the ANC wants to sing the praises of, is going to bring the ruling alliance of ANC, COSATU and SAC to a head. You can see already now there are rumblings of discontent. It's just at the beginning of the GNU. What's going to happen over the next 4 to 5 years, I think is going to be have cataclysmic consequences for the future and fate of the alliance.
It's part of a much bigger splintering. I mean, we've been talking about the splintering of our politics for a long time. We see that in the Labour movement, and I suppose the key moment in that was the expulsion of NUMSA from COSATU, and that also was driven by the relationship with the ANC. COSATU members wanted to force NUMSA to support the ANC, and NUMSA wouldn't.
Yes, but even what you're raising is critically important. You see, I don't want to use this platform. There's very little time. Every one of those affiliates of COSATU is complicit. Every public sector affiliate, NUMSA, all of them, NIHAU, SATU, all of them are complicit with the ANC because of them being in the alliance. I think now with the ANC losing power, you're going to see some dynamic changes occurring there. But the fact is, whether we like it or not, they stuck. I call them suckers for punishment. I had a Mail and Guardian column already in the late 1990s. I'm probably the biggest critic of this ruling alliance, Stephen, in this country. And I can tell you now, from my own reading of the situation, I don't see any future for this alliance. It's going to become increasingly bedeviled with divisions, and you might see a split.
Sure. Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, thank you very much indeed, a former unionist and political analyst as well. And of course, if you look at it, it does suggest that there's still many, many more political consequences to come from the government, the coalition government, which has been formed in the ANC's decision to work with the Democratic Alliance. Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, bringing an end to your mediated conversation this morning. My thanks also to Imbazima Shilowa, the former Premier of Gauteng and the former General Secretary of COSATU, now a columnist at News 24. The other two voices you heard in that mediated conversation, Bheki Mtolo is the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary of the ANC, and before that, Ayanda Zulu was the Provincial Secretary in KwaZulu-Natal of NIHAU. And in a way, it was Bheki Mtolo who publicly started all of this, but I suspect that actually the tensions have been running, as you've heard through this mediated conversation, much, much deeper than that. Many different things brewing. Well, a lot more to come for you on SAFM. Kathy will be with you next, and there'll be a lot more to come after that as well with Sakina, and a lot more news, I think, to keep you going through the day. I suspect the conversations around the NHI after that court ruling will continue. More on HIV as well, and everyone sort of watching the situation in government. I'll be with you for my last day with you tomorrow. From Mdu, Stanza, Zelma, and Melissa, myself, look after yourself. We'll see you tomorrow with SFM leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Top stories for this hour. Interpol Secretary General on a visit to South Africa, and sections of the Health Act declared unconstitutional. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The South African Police Service is one of the reasons Interpol's Secretary General Jurgen Stock is visiting the country is to hand over mobile devices to police to help them to fight cross-border crime. Stock, who is on a 2-day working visit, will also seek to strengthen police cooperation and assess progress made in fighting transnational organized crime. The National Police spokesperson, Athlenda Mat.
These devices will allow our police officers attached to our Interpol office to have comprehensive information database on, for example, firearms, stolen vehicles, lost passports. They'll be able to see red notice alerts, yellow notice alerts, which are for missing people. I think red notice is for wanted people and so on.
Meanwhile, Mate says that 15 SAPS members have left for Paris to assist with policing functions during the 2024 Paris Olympics. This follows the French government's request for officers to support its interior security to ensure a safe event. The police officers have been selected from all 9 provinces. Mate further elaborates.
We have full confidence in the members that have been sent to the police the Olympics. We've been involved in the policing of several world-class events, including BRICS Summit and AGOA, which took place without incident and disruptions. We're confident that this opportunity will allow members to come back to share and transfer skills and knowledge to other members, which will assist us in enhancing the policing of large gatherings and crowds.
The High Court in Pretoria has declared sections of the Health Act unconstitutional. They relate to an aspect of the National Health Insurance, which requires the Health Department to issue a certificate of need. The aim is to control where doctors and medical practitioners would operate once the scheme starts. At least 8 applicants, including Solidarity, the Hospital Association of South Africa, approached the court. They successfully challenged the Health Minister, the Department and President Cyril Ramaphosa on the validity of the certificate. In other news, Tshepo Matseba, managing director of a consultancy firm, says the government of national unity is so far perceived in a positive light internationally. He says the only shortfall may be the GNU's stance on the conflict between Gaza and Israel, which seems to have taken a backseat. Matseba adds, though, that the positive outlook to continue, the GNU should focus on addressing issues such as the energy crisis and crime.
Actually, in the domestic market, one would argue that the government of national unity is perceived in a both negative and positive light, even though a lot more people are leaning more towards the positive, I would say the majority in terms of the commentary. But we are yet to test, and the test will be in the pudding when you speak to citizens in terms of a domestic perception survey. But in addition, the test will be in the delivery of services.
And lastly, looking further afield, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told a joint session of the U.S. Congress that his country will have total victory over Hamas in Gaza. Netanyahu insisted Israel would retain security control over the Palestinian territory after the war. As thousands of protesters gathered outside, many Democrats stayed away from his address. Among them was the Congresswoman for Illinois, Delia Ramirez, who says that Netanyahu is not welcome.
Netanyahu went to our joint session to continue to spew the same language he has continued to use and hypocrisy. We've been saying yes to him for 9 months. Yes to more money. Yes to transfer of arms. Yes to bombs. And yet, the hostages are not home. We are closer to a regional war, and almost 40,000 Palestinians have died. A war criminal shouldn't be in our joint session. Frankly, I think he should be in prison.
Recapping the top story for this hour. The South African Police Service is one of the reasons behind Interpol Secretary General's visit, Jurgen Stock, is to hand over mobile devices to police to help them fight cross-border crime. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
Look out for great savings on dental health products at Dis-Chem. Get 2+1 cheapest free when you buy from the same brand offer. Find the widest range of brands you love, such as Dental Mate, Sensodyne, Colgate, and more. Smile brighter with 2+1 cheapest free on the widest range of manual toothbrushes, toothpaste, and mouthwashes. Valid until 11 August at Dis-Chem pharmacies. Better health starts here.
Futafri is more than just football. It's a celebration of passion, community, and the magic of Africa's beautiful game. Futafri goes beyond the final score. Uncover the heart of the game with special profile segments, taking you on a captivating journey across the continent. Experience the fabric of African football. Futafri every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. on SABC1 and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You know, there's something I hear a lot of my colleagues say. I want to work hard and make money in the private sector. And then when I have money, I'm going to go and change people's lives. It's a lie we tell ourselves. Why can't you change people's lives today? And no one is saying you need to come home. No one is saying you need to abandon your career or whatever it is you enjoy doing. But it is a sense of responsibility that says, if my brother is down, then I am down too. It is a deep understanding of the idea that I am because we are. It's not just a saying we say to sound kumbaya. And so, if we're ashamed about how the rest of the world looks at us, then we should be ashamed about the child in Makoko who can't get an education. We should be ashamed about that 13.5 million kids out of school. And we should put in the junk this, there's another side to Africa. No one cares. I don't. And I don't think those kids do either. As an elite, we have failed our society, and we have to fix it. In the first book of Corinthians, verses 10, verse 24, I have to quote Bible, I'm sorry, I'm a pastor's kid. It says, let us not seek our own interest, but the interest of each other. Our elite have to do better. We have to grow up. We have to take responsibility for our societies. We cannot sit here and be throwing missiles into the open, claiming we're intelligent. Where is the proof? I hope that our elites start to think, rather than ask each other, as we have for an entire generation, what do you want to be when you grow up? We have to ask ourselves, who do we want to be when we grow up?
Iyi Nowula Abujeyi is a Nigerian entrepreneur and kicking us off on the talking point for this morning. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Of course, the week has gone by so quickly.